rose halfway through another sip. The mug hung suspended in his hand as he blinked at me, caught completely off guard. "Well," he said after a long pause, that came out of left field. I gave a half smile. "Yeah, I figured it might." He set the mug down slowly, leaning back in his chair. "You seriously want to ask me for marriage advice?" I nodded once. "Dead serious, even after she left you stayed committed to her. That fact alone means you knew in your heart she was the one for you." Charlie scratched the back of his neck, buying himself time. "Hey! Guess I shouldn't be surprised. You've always been one to think things through before jumping." "That's one way to put it," I said with a faint grin. He studied me for a long moment before sighing. "Renee and I." He trailed off, his eyes unfocusing a little, like he was looking backward through time. "It wasn't fireworks right away. Not like some storybook thing. She was bright, too bright for me, probably, but she had this way of making everything feel bigger. Like life had more color with her in it." He rubbed at his jaw, eyes softening. "You don't know right away, not really. You just stop imagining life without them in it. Then one day, you realize that thought alone scares the hell out of you, and that's when you know." I sat quietly, letting the words sink in. Charlie leaned forward then, elbows on the table. "You're asking because of Edythe, right?" "Yeah." He nodded slowly, understanding dawning behind the weariness in his eyes. "She's a good girl. Quiet, but you can tell she sees everything. Kind of like you, more thoughtful than most." He gave a small, crooked smile. "Just make sure what you're feeling isn't about owing her something. Love's gotta be a choice, not a debt." "I know," I said quietly. "It's not about that. She didn't fix me. She just saw me. Even when I couldn't." Charlie nodded once, a genuine warmth flickering in his expression. "Then I'd say you've got your answer." He stood, picking up his empty mug. "And for what it's worth, you don't need my blessing. But you've got it anyway. Just don't tell anyone I got sentimental, all right?" I stood too, smiling. "Wouldn't dream of it." Charlie grunted, heading for the sink. "Good. Now go on before I start giving real fatherly advice." "That's a slippery slope, kid." "Thanks, Uncle Charlie," I said, stepping toward the door. He waved me off with one hand, muttering, "Yeah, yeah. And don't you dare elope without telling me first." I laughed as I walked back to the truck. Chapter 143, Something That Means Forever. Thomas POV. The drive up to the Cullen house felt longer than usual, not because of the distance, but because of what I was planning to say once I got there. The forest slid by in a blur of green and grey, the air heavy with the scent of moss and wet cedar. By the time I pulled into the clearing, the familiar house rose from the mist like something half-remembered. Carlyle's Mercedes was parked beside Esme's Escalade. The others were still at school, and the quiet that came with their absence made the place feel almost sacred, like stepping into a cathedral built from glass and rain. I found Carlyle in his study, surrounded by open books and soft light filtering through the high windows. He looked up from his desk the moment I knocked on the door frame. "Thomas," he greeted warmly, his smile genuine. "It's good to see you. I didn't expect you until this evening." I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. "Yeah, well. I had something on my mind. Figured you were the best person to talk to." He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "That sounds serious." I sat, elbows resting loosely on my knees. For a moment, the words caught in my throat. Everything I'd rehearsed in the truck sounded too formal now, too small. Carlyle waited with that endless patience of his, the kind that made silence feel like an invitation instead of a wait. Finally, I exhaled. "I wanted to talk to you about Edythe." His smile deepened slightly, faint amusement flickering in his eyes. I suspected as much. I rubbed a hand over the back of my neck. I'm not here to ask your permission. She's already said yes, if I ask, that is. Ah. Carlyle leaned back, folding his hands together, his tone thoughtful. Then you're here for something more meaningful. I nodded. Your blessing. Not because I think I need it, but because she's your daughter. In every way that counts. And I want to do this the right way. For a long moment, Carlyle said nothing. His eyes softened, and the faintest smile touched the corners of his mouth. You remind me of myself, in a way, he said at last. When I realized what Ez meant to me, what she already was to me, I felt the same need. Not for permission, but for grounding. For something to make that love real in the world. He rose from behind the desk and came around to stand beside me. Thomas, you've already proven more than once that you'd walk through fire for her. I can't think of a stronger foundation than that. You have my blessing, wholeheartedly. I stood too, the tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying easing out of my shoulders. Thank you, Carlyle. That means more than you probably know. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his expression both kind and solemn. Then take my advice, when you ask her, don't make it about the past or the future. Make it about the moment. Immortality is long, but moments like that are what give it meaning. I smiled faintly. I'll remember that. Carlyle's eyes glinted with quiet humor. Now, if I were to guess, I'd say Emmett and Jasper are already slated for a shopping trip they haven't agreed to yet. I chuckled. You'd guess right. He laughed softly, returning to his desk. Go on then, before Alice decides to accidentally see the proposal in a vision and ruin the surprise. On my way, I said, heading for the door, but not before glancing back at him once more. Carlyle met my eyes, his voice steady. She's lucky, you know. I smiled. So am I. Next stop, I told myself, Emmett, Jasper, and a ring worth forever. Finding Emmett and Jasper wasn't hard, they were exactly where I expected them to be, the garage. The soft hum of music filtered through the open door, something low and rhythmic, the kind of background noise Emmett claimed made engines purr better. The smell of oil, steel, and polish hit me the moment I stepped inside. Jasper was leaning against the workbench, calm and unbothered, while Emmett was half buried under the hood of his Jeep, muttering to himself about torque ratios and human limits of endurance. You know, I said, leaning against the doorframe, most people don't try to arm wrestle their cars into submission. Emmett's head popped up, grinning. When you can lift an engine block with one hand, you stop worrying about the manual. Jasper smirked, arms folded. Translation, he stripped another bolt. Did not, Emmett said, too fast, too defensive. I couldn't help laughing. You too busy? I need a little help. Emmett raised a brow. Help or backup? Depends on how you define the word shopping, I said. That earned me a long, knowing look from Jasper and a slow grin from Emmett. Oh no, Emmett said, wiping his hands on a rag. You're not dragging me through a jewelry store, are you? Wouldn't dream of it, I said, though my tone probably betrayed me. Hell no, he groaned. I can fight bears, I can rebuild an engine, I can even survive Alice's wardrobe interventions, but jewelry stores? That's a war zone, man. Jasper pushed off the bench, that quiet southern drawl slipping into his words. Don't listen to him. He's just mad 'cause Rosalie made him sit through a 2-hour lecture on diamond clarity when he picked her ring. That was trauma, Emmett said, pointing at him. Not education. I laughed, shaking my head. Relax. I just need a second opinion. And, well. I shrugged. I'd rather have her brothers help me than anyone else. That shut them both up for a second. Jasper's expression softened into something like respect. You're serious about this? Dead serious, I said. Emmett let out a low whistle. Damn. The kid's growing up. Then he slapped my shoulder, hard enough to make me stagger half a step. All right, fine. Let's go find the rock that's gonna make Edythe swoon. Edythe doesn't swoon, Jasper said mildly. She calculates. Then let's get her something that'll mess with her perfect logic, Emmett said with a grin. C'mon, lover boy, we're taking the jeep. Forks didn't exactly have a thriving jewelry district, so we had to drive to Port Angeles. The trip was loud, mostly Emmett trying to convince Jasper that a proposal without fireworks or a choreographed entrance wasn't a real proposal. Dude, you've got to make it cinematic, Emmett said, looking back from the driver's seat. Like, take her somewhere dramatic. The cliffs. The meadow. Hell, even the school parking lot if you have to, she'll never see it coming. I'm not proposing in a parking lot, I said flatly. Jasper chuckled. Good call. Rosalie would have set the car on fire if Emmett had tried that. Emmett muttered, it was raining, like that explained everything. We hit the third jeweler just after 3. The clerk looked like she didn't know whether to be impressed or terrified when 3 guys built like MMA fighters walked in and started studying engagement rings with unnerving focus. Jasper was methodical, inspecting details with surgical precision. Emmett, meanwhile, kept pointing at rings that could double as small weapons. This one, he said, holding up something that sparkled enough to blind a small town. It screams commitment. It screams bankruptcy, Jasper said dryly. Details, Emmett shot back. I eventually found one that stopped me cold. A simple design, platinum, with a single diamond set low into the band. Elegant, understated, timeless. It wasn't about flash or size, it was something that would look right on her forever. That's it? Jasper asked quietly, catching my expression. Emmett squinted. That little thing? C'mon, man, you can do better than that. I smiled. No, I can't. This is her. Emmett studied me for a moment, then smirked. Yeah, okay. I can see it. We paid, or rather I did, though Emmett tried to slip the clerk extra cash for the romance fund. Jasper smacked him before he could. The drive back was quieter. The ring sat in a small velvet box in my jacket pocket, heavy in a way no metal should be. Emmett leaned back in the passenger seat, hands behind his head. You gonna ask her tonight? I shook my head. Not yet. Not until it's the right moment. Jasper nodded, his tone thoughtful. You'll know when it is. People like you don't stumble into moments, you make them. I smiled faintly at that. Here's hoping. The trees began to thicken as Forks came back into view, the grey light of afternoon filtering through the mist. Edythe didn't know it yet, but one day soon, when I held her hand, she'd have something new shining between her fingers. Something that meant forever. Chapter 144, Old Binds, New Boundaries. Thomas POV. The forest was dark by the time I got home. The rain hadn't returned yet, but the air felt like it wanted to, heavy with the kind of quiet that makes sound travel farther. The headlights swept across the house as I pulled in, catching on the edges of the porch before vanishing into the trees. Inside, everything was still. Edythe had left a note on the counter in that perfect looping writing of hers. Out hunting with Alice. Back before dawn. I smiled despite myself, setting the note down beside the small velvet box in my hand. The contrast made me pause, her elegant handwriting beside the little square that could change everything. The box looked absurdly small for what it held. Just a ring. Metal and stone. But it felt alive in a way no object should, heavy with what it meant rather than what it was. I sat at the table, turning it in my hand. The light from the lamp above caught the diamond, throwing small fragments of silver across the wood. Carlyle's words echoed back to me, don't make it about the past or the future. Make it about the moment. I wasn't sure what that moment looked like yet, but I knew it had to be hers. It had to fit Edythe, the way she existed between grace and danger, between stillness and motion. The way she made forever seem not terrifying, but possible. I thought about the meadow, the one she and Bella had both told me about, their hidden place. But it didn't feel right. That was their story, not mine. For Edythe, it needed to be something simpler. Closer. Something real. My gaze drifted toward the window, toward the faint glow that shimmered through the trees where the Cullen house stood miles away. The same forest that had once nearly witnessed my death, was now the thread that tied every piece of my life together. I walked upstairs to our room looking for a place to hide the box until I was ready for it. My eyes fell on one of Edythe's old journals, the one she'd written near the end of her life. Its pages were fragile, the ink faded, but the last line always stood out to me. I picked it up and read it again. Love is not the bond that holds power, it is the power itself. I closed the book and set it beside the ring. Guess you'd approve, Grandma, I muttered softly. I looked at the bed and then the clock beside it. It's not that late and I feel restless after the heaviness of the day. Let's burn off some energy. I removed my clothes and left them on the bed before walking downstairs and out the front door. Once again happy that my house was in the woods, I took a deep breath and before letting it out, I shifted all the way to my final form, the dire tiger. Then with no hesitation, I ran into the woods. I had run the forest for about a half an hour, not bothering to pay attention to where I was so long as I was in the deep woods. Lots of new scents in the forest, almost all were wolf scent. Guess the tribe got a few more wolf warriors. I reached out with my mind to see if I could feel Sam like I was able to before my trip to Nepal but didn't feel anything. Either he wasn't out tonight, or my gift had changed, and that connection wasn't part of me anymore. I had gone maybe another 10 minutes before I felt a push on my mind. Thomas. Hello Sam. I just reached out to see if you were around a few minutes ago. How are things? There was a pause before Sam answered. I started moving in the direction of the Quileute border without consciously deciding to. It's different lately. Louder, busier, more of us now. The words felt measured, like he was trying to keep things generalized. I slowed my pace, weaving between the trees until I came to a rise overlooking the river. The moonlight that made it through the clouds painted the surface silver. I noticed. The forest smells like your pack stretched its legs. I felt an agreement from Sam, as if he nodded his head. When the Cullens left we didn't bother so much with borders. Now that they are back we are training the new members to run and protect our lands. If it would help any, I would love to meet up with the new pack members. It would give them my scent and help avoid any confusion later on. Another long pause followed before Sam replied. Let's hold off on that, Thomas. The elders want us to remain cautious and you returning the same time as the Cullens have them wondering. I get it, I sent back. They're protecting their people. Exactly, Sam replied. His mental tone softened, like the low rumble that used to come before a smile. Let me smooth things over first. Once they're settled, we'll bring you in to meet the pack. You'll like most of them. Jared's solid. Paul well, you'll smell him before you see him. That earned a mental snort from me. That bad, hey. No. Angry. Loud, Sam said, amusement edging into his voice. He's still learning how to be more than his temper. Sounds like a few shifters I met in Nepal, I replied. He'll either grow out of it or burn himself out. I'm hoping for the first one, Sam sent back, and this time, I could almost hear the smile. We let the silence stretch between us easy, companionable, threaded through with the sound of the wind moving through the trees. That's what I always liked about talking to Sam. He didn't fill the air with words he didn't mean. You really are different, he said finally. Your presence feels steadier now. More centered. I didn't know how to respond to that. I had a few trials while I was gone. Learned more about myself and accepting the shift. That must be what you're sensing. Maybe, he agreed quietly. Then, after a beat, either way, it's good to have you home. I felt that, not a sound or thought, but something older. The pulse of the forest between us, the subtle acknowledgement of one alpha born to another. It's good to be back, I sent, before breaking the link and letting the world flood in again. The forest felt alive in that way only the Pacific Northwest could, moss and mist and distance humming together. I turned away from the border stream and started back toward home, my paws silent against the damp ground. Suddenly a figure burst through the woods beside me, a deep growl escaped from a maw of white teeth. The impact came hard and fast enough to stagger me as I was caught off balance. I rolled with it, claws digging into the earth as a grey blur hit my flank and tried to drive me down. The snarl that tore out of me split the silence like thunder. Wolf. Young. Strong. Reckless. One of the new ones, probably Paul. He snapped at my throat, wild, unrestrained, but his timing was sloppy. I met him head-on, my paw catching him square in the shoulder. The force sent him crashing through a sapling, the crack of wood echoing through the trees. He was back on his feet in seconds, hackles high, lips peeled back over his teeth. His thoughts weren't words, but I could feel the pulse of them: rage, instinct, confusion. I crouched low, tail lashing. I roared at him with intent, knowing we couldn't talk. Back off, kid. He lunged again. This time I didn't move aside. I met him mid-leap, twisting my weight just enough to catch him across the ribs. The sound he made was half a bark, half a shout. He hit the ground hard and rolled, snarling, but I didn't give him time to recover. In 2 strides, I was over him, paw pressed against his chest, claws half unsheathed, just deep enough to make the message clear. His eyes locked on mine, and for the first time, I saw fear cut through the fury. My growl came out low and resonant, a sound that wasn't entirely human or beast. He froze. The fight drained out of him like water from a broken dam. He lost control of his shift and reverted to human. Sam pushed at my mind, I allowed him in. What's happening, Thomas? I felt Paul fighting, and when I focused on him, I saw you standing over him before he faded from the pack mind. Jared appeared a heartbeat later, in wolf form, circling wide with his ears flat. Paul shouted at Jared. He is in our territory, attack him. Don't worry about me. Sam charged in and stopped before shifting to human form. No, Sam said, he was near it. And you know better than to attack without confirmation. Paul glared up at me, defiant even through the pain. He doesn't smell like you or Jared or any of us. He smells wrong. Sam gave him a look that could have frozen fire. He is Thomas, I have told you about him, and so has Jared. I owe him my life. You'd do well to remember that. Jared huffed in quiet agreement. Before shifting to human shape as well, what have I told you about rushing in, Paul? I stepped back, letting Paul breathe again, then I shifted to human as well. You're fast, I said evenly, but you don't think. A bad combination for anyone who wants to live long. Paul's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. The challenge had bled out of him. Sam turned to me, his expression apologetic. I'm sorry, Thomas. He's still new. His instincts get ahead of his sense. I shook my head. It's fine. He'll learn. Sam gave a short nod, but his tone carried quiet gratitude. Thank you for not killing him. I gave a chuckle. Would have been a waste of fur. That earned a faint smile from Jared, even as he helped Paul to his feet. We'll handle the cleanup, he said, and Sam nodded. As they left, Sam and I resumed our shifted forms. Sam's thoughts brushed mine once more through the link. You handled that better than I could have expected. The elders will hear about it, and that you didn't spill blood. Didn't seem necessary, I sent back. He's young. He'll figure out which fights matter and how to survive them. Maybe, Sam replied. Still, I owe you one. No, you don't. But if you feel that strongly about it, keep it in mind when you deal with the Cullens. They truly are not the enemy. I answered, pulling the link closed, then I turned and slipped back into the forest. I ran until the air was clean of the scent of wolf, until the only heartbeat I could hear was my own. Home wasn't far. If Edythe wasn't there yet, she would be when I woke, and that was enough. Chapter 145, Tension. The days passed, slower now that the school finally worked out my credits from the correspondence courses I had taken. I was all set to graduate with everyone in my year. The only catch is that I have to finish the rest of the year. Alice was highly amused. Adding to my day's frustration, my truck was in the shop for a quality recall on the crankshaft. Since Edythe was being the passenger princess and didn't ship her car back, we were bumming a ride with Edward today. That meant riding along as Edward took Bella home after school. It was amusing to me that Charlie had Bella on a schedule for being grounded. If Edward was driving, she had only 13 minutes from last class bell ringing before she had to cross the threshold of the front door to home. If she missed this, Charlie would take over driving her back and forth. Bella was taking the restrictions well enough, once she pointed out that Charlie couldn't push her too far or she would move out. Her being 18 really kept Charlie from taking things as far as he wanted to. I was pulled out of my reflection by Edward suddenly swerving behind a parked truck a couple of houses down from Charlie's. Bella was also confused and asked, "What's wrong, Edward?" He just pointed ahead, and Bella focused on where he pointed. I was a bit confused when I saw a red dirt bike parked in the driveway of Charlie's house. My confusion was deepened with Bella's reaction. "Oh no, 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 no. He didn't." Edward sighed, "He is waiting in the woods over there. He wants to talk with us." "Well, specifically me." Bella was the first out of the car, her face was a mask of rage as she stormed toward the area Edward had indicated. "Traitor!" she shouted. Edward was only a step behind her, but me and Edythe were a little farther back, cautiously watching in confusion. After moving a few feet into the tree line, I saw Jacob being berated by Bella for rating her out to Charlie. His face was drawn tight, anger, guilt, all wrapped together. When I looked behind him, I saw the figure of Leah deeper into the woods. It took a moment to recognize her with her hair cut short. Shame, I thought she looked good with long hair. Edward's voice drew my attention back to the confrontation. He wasn't trying to hurt Charlie, Bella. He just wanted to get you grounded, as a way to keep us apart. "Stay out of my mind, you freak!" Jacoby bellowed. Bella drew his attention back to herself. You idiot Jake. I am already grounded, why do you think I haven't been by to yell at you for ducking my calls?" Jacob's eyes went wide, and he looked even more shameful. "He thinks it's been me keeping you from seeing him," Edward supplied. Jacob's face went angry, and a low growl escaped his throat. "That's really irritating. I can speak for myself, Leech." While I was watching the back and forth between the three, I didn't notice Edythe watching Leah with narrowed eyes. Edythe watched as Leah stared intently at Thomas, her eyes looked a little pleading as if begging for a reaction she wasn't getting. Edward's voice went tight, as if he was holding himself back. "Then say what you have come to say, Mutt. We are running out of time, unless you want Charlie to hear your long-prepared speech as well." As if on cue, Charlie's voice sounded out in a yell. "Bella! Don't think I didn't see his car try to hide behind the Ferguson's truck. You get in here right this minute." Bella flinched, and Jacob blushed even more, but he finally said what he had come to say. "I am here to remind you of the treaty." Edward interrupted him, "We know it well, Jacob. We have never broken it, unlike you." Jacob acted like he didn't hear Edward and continued. "If any of you Cullens bite a human, the treaty is broken, and we are free to hunt you as we find you. Even tell the town all about you. That was the agreement. The last sentence was aimed at Bella. Bella's expression hardened, the anger melting into something sharper. Jacob. But Edward stepped subtly between them, his posture tense, protective, one hand braced at Bella's back. Your point is made, Edward said, tone dangerously calm. My point, Jacob snapped, is that I'm not going to let her. You don't get a say, Bella cut in, furious now. You don't control my choices. Or my life. And you definitely don't get to threaten people I care about just because you're throwing some kind of supernatural tantrum. Jacob flinched as if she'd slapped him. He raked a hand through his hair, frustration shuddering through him. Bella. I'm trying to protect you. That's not protection, she said, voice trembling with anger. That's you deciding you get to choose for me. Charlie's voice blasted from the porch again. Bella. I swear to God. Bella winced. Coming, she shouted back, then glared at Jacob one more time. We'll talk more later, but on my terms. She spun around and stormed toward the house and the waiting Charlie. Edward spared Jacob one last cool, unreadable look before following her. Edythe brushed her fingers against my hand, a wordless come on, but her eyes lingered on Leah a moment longer, unreadable. Jacob stared after Bella like the world was slipping out from under him. Leah finally spoke, her voice low and sharp enough to cut through the mist. Come on, Jake, she said. This wasn't worth it. Jacob didn't answer, his body started to shudder and suddenly his clothes burst as he shifted into a large brown wolf and raced into the trees. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little. I just didn't put any thought into it in my defense. I glanced at Leah and saw a pained and curiously furious look in her eyes before she too exploded through her clothes and shifted into a light grey wolf with a narrower muzzle compared to the other wolves I had seen. Again, surprise cost me a few moments. Leah, wait. Before my words could reach her though, she was gone. I sighed in frustration. Edythe placed a hand on my shoulder. You, okay? Yeah, she just surprised me. I need to get the books written by Elyrim to her. Edythe's fingers tightened gently on my shoulder. You're worried about her, she said quietly. Of course I am. I scrubbed a hand over my face, still staring into the trees where Leah had vanished. She's the first female wolf since Elyrim. The elders didn't handle it well back then. If they treat her the same way. My jaw clenched. I didn't finish the thought. Edythe didn't need me to. They won't, she said, her voice a low promise. Not if you're there. I huffed out a grim laugh. They don't even want to look at me, let alone listen. Her expression softened. They will. They know what you did for Sam. For Emily. And they know you didn't hurt Paul the other night, even though you could have. That won't matter if they panic, I muttered. Fear makes people stupid. We made it to the street before Edythe stopped me and pulled me into an embrace. She then pulled back and placed her hand on the side of my face. Then we deal with it when it comes. Before I could respond, the front door slammed, and Charlie's voice rose again inside the house. Bella's answering shout followed a moment later. Edward remained on the porch, caught between amusement and guilt, and offered me a tired look before retreating to his car. He knew his presence would only make things worse. Knowing I wouldn't make anything better by lingering, I took Edythe's hand and followed Edward back to the car. As he pulled away from the curb, I exhaled. Well, that could have gone worse. Edward's answering sigh was heavy. All I saw was another reason for Charlie to hate me and another week added to Bella's sentence. I wouldn't worry about Charlie hating you, I said. Edward didn't look convinced. He has every reason. I made a disaster of things in more ways than I can count. I gave a low chuckle. You're not young, but you are new to some things. Mistakes come with the territory. Time will fix more than you think, if you let it." He was quiet for several seconds, the streetlights carving thin lines of gold across his face. Finally, he murmured, "You make it sound simple." "It is simple," I said. "Just not easy." That pulled the faintest smile from him, reluctant, but real. Edythe caught it too, her posture eased beside me. "You tried to protect her," she said softly. "You chose wrong, but you chose out of love. Humans do far worse for far pettier reasons." Edward's jaw tightened once before he admitted, "I don't deserve how quickly she forgives." "Probably not," I said honestly. "But she's forgiving you anyway. That says more about who she is than what you did." "And," Edythe added, "Bella isn't forgiving the pain. She's forgiving the motive behind it. There's a difference." Something in Edward's expression shifted, the hardness easing, the guilt pulling back from the edge. The wipers dragged lazily across the windshield as the mist thickened. Quiet settled in the car again, gentler this time. "Charlie doesn't hate you," I added. "That's still up for debate." "No," I countered. "What he hates is losing his daughter to adulthood, to danger, to things he can't control. You just happen to be the nearest target." Edythe nodded. "He's blaming what's easiest to blame. That usually means you." Edward huffed, not quite a laugh, but close. "Wonderful. You'll win him back," I said. "Slowly. One steady step at a time. Bella's worth the effort." This time, he didn't argue. He just nodded, eyes fixed on the road, something steadier settling into his expression. Edythe squeezed my hand, not for reassurance, but gratitude. For grounding things. For helping her brother. For being the calm when the world kept tipping sideways. "I love you," she whispered as the turnoff to the Cullen house appeared. "And I love you," I said, meaning every word. Things were settling. At least for now. Chapter 146, Too Loud, Too Close. Leah POV. I picked up the last 2 plates from the table and walked them to the kitchen where Mom was stacking everything before washing the dishes. Leftovers in the Tupperware, scraps scraped into the trash. Orderly to an almost scary degree. Dinner had been quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed against your ribs and makes the air feel heavy. Mom moved around acting unaware as she worked at every task. She was functioning. But everything was just too stiff, too precise. She wasn't healing, just coping. It has been nearly 2 months now since Dad died, but she was so busy being strong for me and Seth that she wasn't dealing with her own pain and loss. Though, who was I to give her advice? Seth drew my attention away from my thoughts. "Would you talk to Sam again, sis? I am a wolf warrior, sitting around is driving me nuts. I have so much energy and I can't burn it off if I don't run with you guys." I sighed, the same argument, and I knew I would end up seeing the same disappointment in his eyes when I answered him. "It's too much of a risk, Seth. You were able to go before because the Cullens were gone. But they are back now, and Sam doesn't want to take the chance that they would see you as a weak link and use that to attack us. But they haven't hurt anyone before. They even helped Emily. Their nature is not like ours, Seth. We are guardians and they are predators. Who knows what could set them off? Sam needs you here just in case things go badly. You remember the signal, right? 2 sharp howls mean shift and listen for instructions to pass on to Mom and the elders." "I know, but I feel so useless." "Just ask him, please. See." I looked up and saw Mom watching Seth with fear in her eyes. She was a major reason I didn't push Sam to change his mind. I didn't think she would handle it well if both me and Seth were in danger. The conversation was interrupted by 2 hard knocks followed by a softer third one at the front door. As if by the third knock the person was unsure about being here. Everyone in the house knew who it was. Seth jumped from his seat at the kitchen table and ran to the door with a shout of "Charlie," as he pulled the door open. Mom froze for half a beat, then ran a hand over the sides of her hair before walking out of the kitchen toward the living room. "Evening, Charlie," she said, her voice softer, more natural than it had been all day. I watched as Charlie Swan stepped inside just enough so that Seth could close the door, as if he was afraid he was intruding. He was holding a foil-covered dish in his hand. "Brought the, casserole thing you said you liked, Sue." Mom's shoulders loosened. "Just a little." "That's very kind of you," she murmured. "But you don't have to keep bringing food over, Charlie." He shrugged. "Your husband was my best friend. Seems right to keep an eye on his family." Something flickered in Mom's expression: gratitude, hurt, relief, guilt. A whole mess of things she wasn't ready to talk about. She took the dish and retreated to the kitchen. I figured she used it as an excuse to pull herself back together. Charlie nodded to Seth. "Hey, kid." "Hey," Seth said, trying to sound casual. His tone shifted into something else when Charlie turned to me. "How are you holding up, Leah?" "Peachy," I said flatly. The corner of his mouth twitched, like he wasn't convinced but wasn't going to push. Charlie never pushed. That was probably why Mom breathed easier when he visited. Mom came back into the living room carrying a clean bowl that had been brought previously by Charlie. "Here you go, wouldn't want you to have to buy new bowls every time you needed to store something." Charlie took it. "Thanks, got a feeling it will be full by the end of the day." Isabella is still grounded, so she has been making time-consuming meals, and big ones to boot. Sometimes she forgets Thomas moved out and we don't need near as much food anymore. He finished the last sentence with a laugh. I tried to ignore the stutter that name brought to my chest. He only stayed a few more minutes, enough to talk about weather and fishing and some dumb story about Paul nearly mowing down old man Lopez's mailbox, before excusing himself. Mom watched him leave through the window. She whispered, almost to herself, "Your father would have liked that he checks in." Seth and I exchanged a glance. We both knew that she seemed to hurt less for a while after Charlie visited. Later, when Mom disappeared upstairs, Seth turned to me with a sigh. "You think she'll be okay for a while?" "Yeah," I said. "She'll be asleep in 20 minutes. "No, I mean, actually okay." I swallowed hard. "Eventually." We didn't hug. We didn't talk about it. We just understood. I noticed the time and swore I was late. "Time to run." I paused a second. "I will ask if Jake can take you out to run tomorrow, just stay away from the border, okay?" His face took on a hopeful look. "Trust me," I muttered. "You're not missing out by not being with the group all the time." His brows knit. "Still bad?" I snorted. "Try having Paul and Sam and Jared all shouting in your head at the same time. You should feel blessed you only get the highlights." He grinned sheepishly, and I nudged his shoulder. "Get some sleep, runt. You need some too, Harpy. Your beauty sleep isn't working anymore." That earned him a headlock and a knuckle burn on the top of his head. He laughed even as I let him go and shoved him toward the stairs. When he finally disappeared into his room, I stepped outside and let the cool air hit me. The ache under my skin flared, the shift wanting out, demanding it. I walked to the shed where I stripped and put my clothes away, then I let go. The world snapped into sharp relief as fur replaced skin and claws dug into the earth. The sounds widened, wind threading through branches, owls hunting mice, the low hum of the ocean in the distance. And then, voices. All at once. Too loud. Too close. Too male. Sam's voice was the first I heard clearly. "Leah. You're late." "Yeah, sorry." Charlie stopped by again. Paul's thoughts broke in great. The she-devil herself. My fur bristled. "Say that again, Paul. I dare you to say it in range of my teeth." Paul's smugness radiated through the bond. "Cut it out, both of you." Sam wearily sighed. Way to protect your brother, Sam. Or have you all decided to finally ask which of your dads cheated on your mother to sire Paul? I knew I was being unfair, but I wanted them to keep out of my thoughts as much as possible tonight. Their hatred was easy to deal with, their pity not so much. It was well known that Paul's mother was not Quileute, so for Paul to have the shifter gene strong enough to shift this quickly, well, that meant that his father was one of only a few people. Worse, those few men all happened to be married at the time Paul was born. The pack tried not to think about it, but everyone wondered in the back of their minds if they had a brother. The only problem with insulting Paul was that he was quick to strike back. Someone has sure been touchy since she found out about the little tiger that stalks the woods. Didn't get the chance to work things out with the leech lover the other day when you volunteered to go with Jake to deliver our warning. My anger flared even more. That little tiger sure had you on your back pissing all over your belly the other night, Paul. Pure rage flooded the pack mind at my reminder to Paul's embarrassment. Enough, both of you. Sam's voice overrode any thoughts either Paul or I had about continuing our argument. It wasn't an alpha command, but it was close. I pulled back inside myself as far as I could, trying, pointlessly, to dam the flow of thoughts. And that was the real cruelty of this curse. My feelings for Sam, fainter now, but still sparking up at the worst possible times, flickered in the shared mind like a flare on a dark night. Embarrassment hit me like a punch. I shoved them down, hard, but the damage was done. Jared's reaction came first, a soft, pitying ripple I hated more than Paul's rage. Sam felt it too. Of course he did. He always did. His presence in the mind went tense, guilty, pained, and that was somehow worse than if he'd been angry. Paul, on the other hand. Oh, he fed off it. Still hung up on the boss, Leah, he sneered, the thought oily and sharp. No wonder you're sniffin' around that tiger. Bet he doesn't look at you like you're broken. Another crack of Sam's voice cut him off. Paul. Enough. This time the alpha command landed like a wall slamming down. Paul's mind went blessedly silent. But Sam didn't release the hold right away. His presence pressed against mine, steady, warm, unbearably gentle. Leah. Just my name. No order. No lecture. Just the weight of everything we used to be and everything we could never be again. It hurt. It hurt so much I could barely breathe. I jerked away from the bond as much as I was allowed, baring my teeth at the empty dark. Don't. My thought came out raw and brittle. Don't you dare pity me. A beat of stunned silence rippled through the pack. Then Jared, trying to help, bless him but also screw him, sent a quiet, soothing ripple through the bond, like trying to smooth down a bristling dog. It only made things worse. I snarled through the link, the sound echoing physically from my wolf throat. Everyone shut up. I'm going for a run. Before anyone could answer, I bolted. My paws tore through the underbrush, the earth flying behind me in sprays of moss and soil. I needed distance. I needed speed. I needed to get away from their thoughts, and mine, before I collapsed under the weight of all of it. But the pack mind followed, no matter how far my body went. Jared's quiet concern. Paul's simmering fury. Sam's steady, worried presence. And beneath it all, barely there whispers of something I didn't want them to notice but couldn't hide. The scent of tiger fur picked up second hand. The flicker of sky blue eyes. The way Raizel's presence hit me like a punch to the lungs, not imprinting, not exactly, but something tantalizingly close to the edge of it. And unfortunately for me, Paul noticed. His mind curled around the thought like a smirk. Ooh, so that's what's got you twisted in knots. Not Sam. Not anymore. It's him. My snarl shook the trees. I was 2 seconds from doubling back and ripping out his throat, alpha order or not. Then Sam's presence filled the bond, overwhelming and absolute. Not a warning this time, but a command. Paul. Stop. Leah. Keep running. We'll sort this out when you're ready. I didn't answer. I just ran. Faster. Harder. Until the air burned in my chest and the world blurred into streaks of grey and green. Because if I slowed down, if I let myself think, I wasn't sure the pack mind, or I, would survive what they might hear next. Chapter 147, 20 minutes. Thomas POV. When my eyes opened, they were immediately drawn to a pair of butterscotch eyes that I was certain had been watching me for a while. She lay on her side, propped on one elbow, her head resting in her hand like she'd been perfectly content to stay like that forever. The thin grey light leaking through the curtains wasn't strong enough to make her sparkle, but it made her glow, and my pulse quicken. "Morning," I muttered, voice rough, tongue dry. Her smile widened a fraction. "Sleeping in a little today, I see. It's almost 6:15. A teasing lilt warmed her tone. "That's practically mid-morning for you." I stretched, feeling the muscles in my back and shoulders loosen. Maybe last night's run had taken more out of me than I thought. "You didn't wake me. You needed the extra rest," she said simply. Her fingers traced a slow line over my bare chest, light, absent, but undeniably comforting. "You woke twice. And your breathing changed 3 times. I almost woke you from fear you were having a nightmare." "Sorry," I murmured automatically. She pressed her palm flat over my heart, a cool anchor. "Don't apologize," she whispered. "With everything you've been carrying, I'm surprised you slept at all." "Wolf, tiger, treaty." Her eyes softened. "It's too much for anyone to shoulder alone." I exhaled, not quite a laugh. "Yet. There's a lot." I hesitated, staring at the ceiling before meeting her gaze again. "But I don't know why it feels like it's all on me." Her hand slid up, brushing the line of my jaw with her thumb. "Because that's who you are," she said quietly. "You take responsibility for everything you care about. Even when it isn't yours to fix." I frowned. "It's not healthy." "No," she agreed gently. "It's not. But it is human. And you still are, Thomas. In all the best and worst ways." I snorted. "Lucky me." She leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to the corner of my mouth. "Lucky me," she corrected. That shut me up for a moment. Her eyes glowed in the dim light, searching my face like she was reading something beneath the surface. "Do you want to tell me what kept waking you?" I considered brushing it off, but her expression made that impossible. Edythe Cullen never demanded honesty, but she created a space where lying felt like insulting the ground she stood on. "I kept thinking about Leah," I admitted. "About what she's dealing with. What she's trapped in. And, what might happen if the elders decide to repeat history." My jaw tightened. "She deserves better." "She does," Edythe murmured. "And she will have better. Because you'll make sure of it." She tapped a finger lightly over my heart. "And because she's stronger than even she knows." I sighed. "I want to get the books to her sooner rather than later." "Then we'll figure out a way," she said. "Together." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Yet. Together." Her smile softened, brightening the entire room. "And speaking of together, if you want to make it to campus without Alice forcing an unsolicited outfit change, you have about 20 minutes left." I groaned. "She already threatened my hair yesterday." Edythe laughed, a warm, quiet sound that made my chest feel too small. "Then you'd better hurry, tiger." But she didn't move. Neither did I. For one long moment, she just watched me. And I let myself watch her back. And the velvet box hiding in my dresser drawer felt heavier on my mind than ever. Is this the moment? No, if I have to ask that, then it isn't the moment yet. "You're staring," she murmured. You were staring first, I countered. She gave me that tiny, smug, perfect smirk that said she knew exactly what she was doing to me. So. I sat up, leaned forward, and pressed a kiss to her lips, slow, lingering, grounding. So, we're both wasting our 20 minutes. Edythe huffed a soft laugh. You are impossible. And you like that about me. She didn't deny it. Instead, she slid gracefully off the bed in one fluid motion, moving toward the closet. Go shower. Before I decide to pick your shirt for you. That's not a threat, I called after her. You're right, she said over her shoulder. It's a promise. I groaned and hauled myself out of bed. The floor was cold, but the sound of Edythe's quiet laughter followed me all the way to the bathroom door like warmth spreading under the skin. Before I turned the water on, I heard Edythe call out, 20 minutes. Yeah, I muttered, stepping into the shower. I washed quickly. Experience had taught me that Alice could and would break into my house if I crossed some invisible lateness threshold too often, then toweled off and dressed in the safest outfit I owned, dark jeans and a grey t-shirt. When I stepped back into the bedroom, Edythe had already picked her outfit. Mostly. She was currently deciding between two scarves that looked nearly identical to me. Her eyes swept over me, slow and appraising. Acceptable, she declared. I nodded solemnly. High praise. She rolled her eyes, but the faint smile tugging at her mouth ruined the effect. Let's go before Alice senses your fashion sense through the ether. We should have just enough time for you to eat and meet her before class. I ate quickly, my mind wandering a bit. Once I was done, I grabbed my keys, and Edythe slipped her hand into mine. As we walked to the truck, she glanced at me sideways. We'll figure out Leah's situation. As far as getting the journals to her, you should just go there. It's not like you are banned from their land the way I am. Hey, I hadn't thought of that, simple and uncomplicated. Thank you. You don't need to thank me, she replied. You care about her. That's enough. We reached the passenger door. I paused, thumb brushing over her knuckles. And you? I asked. She tilted her head. Me what? Do you mind? I asked quietly. How much I care about, all of them. Her smile was soft and immediate. I fell in love with someone who protects people, she said simply. It would be strange if I expected you to stop. My throat tightened, warm, too full, too much, and I leaned down to kiss her, quick but earnest. Come on, she whispered when our lips parted, her forehead resting against mine for half a heartbeat. Alice is waiting. Is that a threat or a warning? Both. I opened the door and closed it once she got in. Then walked to the driver's side and hopped in. Starting the truck, my mind went over the list once again. School. Leah. The journals. The ring hidden in my dresser drawer. Break. Lunch at Forks High was exactly the same as I remembered, loud chatter, mystery pizza, and the lingering smell of bleach. Our group had taken over one end of the long table near the windows, Bella wedged between Edward and Angela, Ben scribbling in a notebook, Alice practically vibrating out of her chair, and Edythe beside me, calm as ever. So, Angela asked as she unwrapped her sandwich, how does it feel being back in actual classrooms again? I shrugged. Not much different than studying in Nepal. The assignments look the same, the teachers look tired. Feels normal. Ben blinked. Wait, so you're not behind at all? Nope, I said, popping the pea. The correspondence courses kept me on track. Carlisle made sure the credits counted, so now I just have to finish the in-person stuff. Ben dropped his pencil. Dude. I've lived in Forks my whole life and I'm behind. Bella laughed into her drink. Ben, he has an echoic memory. He could probably pass college exams if we handed them to him right now. Alice chimed in with a groan. Believe me, he could. I checked his planner. He's a walking academic cheat code. That's not how it works, I said. Edythe arched a brow. You memorized the school handbook in under an hour. I had to hear it first. That took more than an hour by itself. She smirked. My point stands. Angela nudged Ben. Maybe Thomas can help with your physics review later. Ben brightened instantly. Would you? Seriously? Physics is just math in a lab coat, I said. I can help. Bella snorted. You keep saying things that belong on t-shirts. Edward shook his head with a sigh. Don't encourage him. Alice leaned forward, finally unleashing what she'd clearly been holding in for 10 minutes. Do you know how infuriating it is that you did 6 months of senior coursework while climbing mountains, fighting, hiding from local animals, and you still walked in here more prepared than most? I blinked. Is that a real question? Angela laughed. She's jealous. Not jealous, Alice said primly. Annoyed. It's different. Bella gave her a look. It's really not. Alice rolled her eyes so hard they probably saw it in La Push. Edythe squeezed my hand under the table. Ignore her. She feels threatened by anyone who doesn't need color-coded post-its. I do appreciate the post-its, I said. Alice gasped dramatically. Finally. Validation. Ben chuckled. I'm just impressed he kept up while living in a monastery on the other side of the planet. It wasn't a monastery, I corrected. It was well, never mind, it's complicated. Angela smiled softly. I'm glad you're back, Thomas. It's nice having the group together again. Now we just need Jessica and Mike to get over their breakup and be friends again. I felt Edythe lean into my shoulder. I glanced at her and smiled when I saw her smiling at me. And as the others talked about finals, prom, and how Mr. Banner's patience was visibly decaying day by day, I realized something. This, lunch, noise, friends, normalcy, was grounding me more than anything had since coming home. Maybe Edythe was right. Maybe I did fit here. At least for now. Chapter 148, Mixed Signals. Thomas POV. When Edythe and I got home after school, I went and grabbed the journals and placed them on the kitchen table. After debating for a while, I knew I couldn't hesitate any longer. Leah needed this link to herself. Looking at Edythe, I smiled. Well, let's hope this doesn't blow up in our face. I removed my clothes and made the shift to Tiger only to come up empty as I tried to reach out for Sam. He must not be shifted. I shifted back and put my pants back on, then started pacing the kitchen wondering how I was going to get a hold of him. Edythe watched me for a couple of minutes with a half smile before she made me feel like the idiot I was, by handing me my cell phone. Didn't you guys exchange phone numbers after you saved Emily? I felt foolish. I knew the number, but I just focused on our usual way of talking and didn't think of the more mundane solution. I gave her a sheepish smile and found his number before hitting call. After 3 rings he picked up. Yulee Residence. Hey Sam, it's Thomas. Sorry to call out of the blue, but I need to see Leah. Will you let her know please, it's important. There was a pause on the line, not long, but long enough to make me picture him pressing a hand to his forehead the way he did when something complicated landed in his lap. Thomas, Sam said slowly, she's not in the best place right now. I know, I said. That's why I need to talk to her. Another pause. A quiet sigh. I'll ask, he said. But I'm not promising anything. Fair enough. He hung up before I could say more. I set the phone down and ran a hand through my hair. Edythe leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, watching me with that expression she saved for moments when she wanted to laugh and comfort me at the same time. It'll be fine, she said softly. Fine is optimistic, I muttered. I know. Her voice warmed. But you're doing the right thing. The wait was surprisingly short. My phone barely finished its first ring before I answered it. Yet. Sam's voice was still flat and unreadable. She said no. Several times. A knot tightened in my stomach. Crap, so much for the easy way. Okay. Tell her I won't. Sam cut me off. She said she doesn't want to talk to you, he continued, and I should give you her address so you can be there before evening rounds. I blinked slowly. Hey. Sam gave a long exhale that sounded suspiciously like a covered laugh, or possibly a sigh of exhaustion. Her words, not mine. I dragged a hand over my face. That's Leah, he finished for me. That's just Leah lately. Yeah, I breathed. Not confusing at all. Sam didn't bother softening his tone. Look, I don't pretend to understand her logic right now. She's volatile. More than usual. That's not very comforting, I muttered. She said, again, quoting, tell him I don't want to see him, and also if he doesn't show up, I'll be pissed. I closed my eyes. That makes zero sense. Welcome to my life, Sam said dryly. Did she say why? No. Then, quieter, but I think she's scared. And if she's scared, she'll bite at anyone who gets close. I ran a hand through my hair again, pacing without meaning to. I don't want to make this worse. Honestly, he said. You're more likely to make it better than anyone else. That pulled me up short. Why would you say that? Sam hesitated, rare for him. Because she listened when you talked to her before. And Leah doesn't listen to anyone she doesn't respect. That landed heavier than I expected. A sharp throat clear over the line. Anyway. I'll text her address. And Thomas. Yeah. Don't push her. And don't back down, either. If you retreat, she'll think you don't care. If you push, she'll try to take your head off. So, walk a tightrope blindfolded. Basically. Fantastic. Sam huffed something close to a laugh. Good luck. The line clicked off. I stood there for a moment, phone still pressed to my ear, brain replaying the words in a loop. Edythe's footsteps were soundless, but I felt her before she reached me. A cool hand slid to the center of my back. That, she murmured, sounded complicated. That was complicated, I said. Leah said no. And also, yes. And also, something in the middle. And maybe also something involving violence. Edythe's lips twitched. That sounds like Leah. Apparently, I'm expected to navigate her emotional minefield. Well, she said, brushing her thumb along my spine, you are very good at walking into explosive situations. Comforting. Any hints on how to walk out of them still intact? Meant to be, and nope. That's a girl's only secret, she said lightly. I grabbed my jacket, slung the backpack over one shoulder. The journals inside felt heavier than before, not physically, but with everything they meant. Wish me luck, I said. Before I realized I was still in just my pants. Edythe laughed at me as I took the time to get fully dressed. Once I was done, I collected my bag again and looked at the door. Wish me luck, I said again lamely. Edythe smiled softly, stepping close enough to straighten my collar even though it didn't need fixing. You don't need luck, she murmured. You just need to show up. Showing up might get me mauled. If she tries, Edythe said serenely, I'll be unhappy. And then what? Then, she said, I will consider being very unreasonable. I barked out a laugh. Fine. I'll do my best to avoid triggering the nuclear option. She leaned in and kissed me once, brief but grounding. Go. Before she convinces herself to slam a door in your face. Already on my way. I headed for the door, heart kicking up as the thought settled. Leah Clearwater said she didn't want to see me. And also told me to come anyway. Yet, this was going to be fun. The drive from my house to the reservation edge felt shorter than ever. Maybe because my brain wouldn't stop rearranging every possible outcome like some kind of emotional chess game. Would she slam the door? Yell? Shift and try to bite my head off? Cry? Pretend not to care? With Leah, any combination was possible. Maybe even all of them in under 5 minutes. By the time I crossed onto the boundary road leading toward her place, I'd rehearsed 8 versions of opening lines and hated every one of them. I slowed near the Clearwater driveway, stopping just before turning in. The house was quiet, lights off except for the kitchen window. A shadow moved past it, too quick to identify. Leah? Sue? Seth? Probably Leah. Probably pacing. Probably regretting telling Sam to send me here. I exhaled, leaning my head back against the seat. Okay. No backing down. No pushing too hard. I paused. Walk a tightrope. Blindfolded. While juggling. Edythe's earlier words echoed unhelpfully. You don't need luck. Just show up. Yet. Well. I was here. So that box was checked. I grabbed the backpack from the passenger seat and unzipped it just enough to see the old leather journals inside. Ilarime's handwriting peeked through like a ghost from another time. Come on, Grandma, I whispered. Help me out here. I got out of the truck before I could talk myself into running the other way. I paused at the bottom of the porch steps. Inside, I heard movement, heavy, pacing steps back and forth across a wooden floor. Then lighter steps. Then heavier again. Like someone was trying very hard not to wear a hole straight through the boards. Leah. Only Leah moved like she wanted to fight the walls. I took a breath. And then the front door yanked open so fast I flinched. Leah stood framed in the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes sharp and bright in a way that made it impossible to tell if she was angry, exhausted, bracing for impact, or all three. It hit me immediately how tired she looked. Not physically she looked like she could bench press a truck, but emotionally. Emotionally, she looked frayed. She stared at me like I was an equation she couldn't solve and didn't want to. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, tone flat as a falling stone. Good. You're here. Get to talking before I change my mind. I blinked. Hi to you too. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought she'd sprain something. Do not start with me, Thomas. I'm already regretting this. That makes 2 of us, I muttered before I could stop myself. Her nostrils flared, not wolf-level flared, but close. Are you seriously going to be a smartass right now? Apparently, I sighed, lifting the backpack a little. Because if I'm being honest, I have no idea what the hell I'm supposed to be doing. Something in her expression flickered, the tiniest crack in her armor. Yet, she said. Welcome to the club. Chapter 149, Not Alone. Leah POV. Welcome to the club. I hadn't meant to say it out loud. It slipped out dry, sharp, too honest. But the look on Thomas's face when I opened the door. Yet. He deserved honesty. He stood on my porch like he'd walked through a storm only he could feel. No tiger, no claws, no supernatural theatrics. Just, him. Broad shoulders, stupid steady eyes, and a backpack hanging off one hand like he was a lost college kid instead of whatever the hell he really was. Behind me, I could hear Seth upstairs, bouncing around like a hyperactive puppy pretending not to listen. Mom was humming to herself in the kitchen, her trying to be okay hum. The one she used when she was holding her grief tight enough to crack her knuckles. Thomas glanced past me toward the house, then back to me as if asking permission without saying it. I crossed my arms. Well? You gonna say something, or just keep standing there like a guilty UPS driver? His mouth twitched. I, brought something for you. Not a good start, I said flatly. Usually people open with hi or nice weather. Right, he replied. Hi. Nice weather. I stared at him. He sighed. Can we talk? I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me. If Mom saw him, she'd offer him soup or something and I'd die on the spot. This better be important, I said, leaning back against the railing. Sam said you needed to talk to me. He lifted the backpack slightly. Yeah. I have some journals. Written by someone who might help you understand what you're dealing with. I waited. And waited. He didn't elaborate. I narrowed my eyes. Thomas. Don't you dare pull that mysterious shifter wisdom crap on me. Use English. His jaw tightened. The first female shifter. Illyrium Black. For a moment, my lungs forgot how to work. A weird buzzing filled my ears. I forced out a laugh. Bitter. Right. Because what I really need is bedtime stories. They're not stories. I don't care. You do, he said quietly. Or you wouldn't be this angry. I hated that he was right. I hated it so much that heat rippled under my skin and my vision sharpened the way it only did right before shifting. I took a breath through my teeth. Leave it alone. No, he said. Just like that. Firm. Annoying. Unmovable. Because you're spiraling, Leah. And you deserve answers. You deserve better than being thrown into this with nothing to guide you. I froze. He wasn't speaking like a Cullen. Or a shifter. Or a guy pretending he could fix everyone. He spoke like someone who saw me drowning. And hated it. I swallowed, my voice scraping on the way out. I don't need your pity. Good, he said. Because I'm not offering it. That stunned me more than anything else he'd said. He took a cautious step closer, enough that I could feel the heat of him, enough that my wolf surged at the proximity, conflicted, confused, trying to decide if he was prey or pack or something else. I didn't have a word for. Thomas held the backpack out between us. You don't have to read them now, he said. Or ever. But they're yours. Written by Ephraim Black's twin sister Illyrium Black, after she was exiled for daring to have power the elders of the time didn't. My breath stopped. Not because of the name Ephraim Black, every kid on the res grew up hearing his story. Greatest chief. Wolf warrior. The protector who bound the treaty with the cold ones. But a twin sister? A shifter? Impossible. Except nothing in my life was impossible anymore. Still, the words hit too close and cut too deep. Cute, I said, even though my voice cracked in the middle. So now you're rewriting tribe history? Thomas shook his head. Not rewriting. Just, adding back the parts that were erased. The buzzing in my ears returned, louder this time. Ephraim Black was a legend. The elders talked about him like he was carved out of stone, perfect, wise, unquestioned. The idea that they'd hidden something like this. My stomach twisted. I hissed out a breath. If this is some kind of joke. It's not. His voice didn't waver. Not even a little. She wrote these. Hundreds of pages. Her life. Her exile. And what it meant to be the first woman to shift. The last words hit like a gut punch. Hot shame curled in my chest. Because part of me, the scared, angry, exhausted part, wanted to believe him. And that made me furious. Why are you giving these to me? I demanded. Why do you even care? Something flickered across his face. Not pity. Not obligation. Something steadier. Something that made my pulse trip. Because you deserve to know you're not alone, he said quietly. And because you're not the first woman to go through this. The tribe leaders of the past just made sure you'd think you were. My breath went thin and shaky. No, I said, but it came out weak. Yes, he answered, and he didn't back down. I hated him in that moment. And I didn't. And that contradiction made my bones itch. My eyes burned. I looked away quickly, pretending it was just the wind. This changes nothing, I said. It changes everything, he said softly. And maybe it would. But right now? Right now, everything inside me felt raw, like exposed nerves scraping against each other. The wolf shoved against my skin, restless, angry, confused. Thomas stepped back a little, giving me space without retreating. I won't push, he said. I won't ask for anything. I'll just be here if you want to talk. I stared at the backpack. At the weight of it. Of her. Illyrium black. Ephraim's twin. Exiled. Forgotten. Hidden. A woman who went through hell alone so the men could keep their spotless story. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. Then, slowly, I reached out and took the bag. Thomas didn't smile. Didn't speak. Just nodded. Don't, I said quietly. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you understand. He held my gaze. No, I don't. Not fully. But I'm trying. Trying. No one tried for me. Not Sam. Not the elders. Not the pack. But Thomas did. Whatever the hell that meant. I swallowed hard and stepped back toward the door. If this blows up in my face, I'm blaming you. His lips twitched. Fair. And don't think this means we're friends. Wouldn't dream of it. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead I shook my head, muttered, "You're impossible," and slipped inside before he could see the confusion twisting up my face. Because for the first time since the wolf wrecked my life, the tightness in my chest eased. Just a little. And that scared me, I admitted to myself as I leaned back into the closed door. I waited. I didn't mean to, and I definitely wasn't hiding behind the door like some emotionally unstable raccoon, but I stayed right there in the narrow entryway, one hand gripping the strap of the backpack so tightly the canvas bit into my palm. Thomas's footsteps retreated across the porch. Slow. Heavy. Hesitant. Then the soft creak of the bottom stair, the crunch of gravel as he made his way back to his truck. The engine of his truck came to life, sounding like the roar of a large cat just before it started to purr. I closed my eyes. Only when the sound faded down the road did I let out the breath I'd been holding. My pulse was still hammering like I'd run a marathon instead of talking to someone on my own porch. Great. Perfect. Totally normal reaction. Leah. Mom's voice drifted from the kitchen. Light. Too light. Was someone at the door? Of course. I plastered on my blandest expression before walking into the kitchen. Just Thomas. He needed something. Mom turned from the sink, eyes narrowing in that gentle, probing way she had when she wasn't sure how much she should push. Her hair was pulled back, apron still on, sleeves rolled to her elbows. Is everything all right? She asked. Fine, I said quickly. Too quickly. It was nothing. Her gaze flicked to the backpack slung over my shoulder. He brought you that? Damn. Yeah, I said, shrugging like it weighed nothing instead of feeling like a 10-ton emotional landmine. Just some reading material. Reading material, she echoed, brows rising. Seth barreled down the stairs at that exact moment like the universe had thrown me a life raft. Was that Thomas? He asked, skidding into the kitchen. Are we going running? Did he bring food? Did he bring? No, I snapped. Seth blinked. Okay. I softened a little. Not much. Just enough. He just dropped something off. Seth's attention zeroed in on the backpack. Like what? Books. Oh. He deflated instantly, disappointment radiating off him like heat from asphalt. Mom didn't give up so easily. Are they school books? She asked. History? English. History, something he thought I would like to read. I muttered. She wiped her hands on a towel, studying me in that way that made me feel both seen and exposed. If you need help with... She hesitated, voice thinning around the edges. With anything, you can talk to me. I swallowed around the sudden lump in my throat. Talking to her would break her. Talking to her would break me. I know, I said softly. Thanks. Seth's eyes darted between us, sensing the shift. So, no running tonight? Not tonight, I said. Maybe tomorrow. He made a face but nodded. Mom gave my arm a squeeze before turning back to the sink. Seth wandered back toward the living room, dragging his feet like gravity had suddenly doubled. And I escaped. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time and slipped into my room, closing the door quietly behind me. The moment the latch clicked, I sagged against it, the weight of the backpack dragging at my shoulder. The house hummed below me, the sink running, Seth flipping on the TV. Mom went back to humming the same brittle melody pretending to be all right. But up here? Up here was quiet. I liked the quiet. I sat on the edge of my bed, placing the backpack in my lap. My fingers hesitated on the zipper. My pulse kicked. This was stupid. This was dangerous. This was... I unzipped it. Inside, 3 old notebooks lay stacked neatly. Worn edges. Softened corners. Paper yellowed with age. The leather bindings cracked from hands far older than mine. My breath shook. Carefully, almost reverently, I lifted the top journal and rested it on my thighs. The cover was simple, no title, no decoration, just aged leather and faint grooves where someone had held it so many times the texture wore smooth. For a long moment, I just stared. Then, with a breath that scraped my ribs raw, I opened to the first page. The handwriting was neat. Strong strokes. Fluid curves. Confident. My name is Illyrium Black. And this is the truth of what the elders feared. The words hit me like a fist to the chest. I traced them with my fingertip. A shiver raced down my spine, wolf and woman both leaning forward, listening, hungry, terrified, hopeful. For the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel completely alone. Chapter 150, The Right Place. Thomas POV. A week slipped by faster than I expected. School settled into its usual rhythm, papers, quizzes, group groans when Mr. Banner assigned another lab write-up. Bella was still grounded, though Charlie had loosened the leash by exactly 1 hour. Edward drove her to and from the house every day, and she walked the line like a parole officer was timing her steps. The Cullens, or at least the 3 currently enrolled, cut their schedules close. They hadn't missed a day so far. Until today. I should have known something was off the moment I pulled into the parking lot and saw Edythe standing by the covered bike rack with her backpack slung over one shoulder. She wasn't moving toward the entrance like she usually did if we arrived separately. She had stayed with Alice last night to hunt, and I missed her when I woke. Maybe I was just overthinking things, and she was waiting for me. She was watching the sky. The sky, which currently held faint wisps of clouds that even I could see were being slowly burned away by the sun. Forks never looked like this unless the universe was trying to be funny. I parked and walked over. Well, that's ominous. Edythe gave me a tight, ironic smile. Alice saw the weather shift last night. She said it would probably be a false alarm. Probably. She lifted her hand, letting sunlight catch the edge of her fingers, careful to keep them in the shade of the bike shed. She was wrong. I glanced at the sky again. So that's it. Sudden vacation day. Not a vacation, she corrected. Just, strategic invisibility. Before I could respond, Alice appeared at her side in a blur, tugging her hood up like she was dressing a reluctant child. Go. Get. Out. Before someone decides today is the day to pay attention. Edward materialized behind them, his expression strained. Bella isn't thrilled about missing a day of group biology. Alice rolled her eyes. If she wants to stare at your face that badly, she can do it after Charlie goes to bed and you sneak into her room like usual. Edythe stepped closer to me, lowering her voice. I really wish I could stay, but there is too much danger if I do. It's only half the day, I am sure we can handle the short separation. I said playfully. Her eyes softened. We'll meet up after school. Alice interrupted with a little groan. Actually, no you won't. It's going to be like this all day. If any of us are going to be out and about, it needs to be away from normal eyes. Edythe gave her a look. I had plans today, Alice. Sorry, Alice chirped, I can only see the weather, not control it. Edward sighed. We better get moving, the little cloud cover that's left is fading fast. Edythe muttered something very unladylike under her breath. I stepped closer. Close enough that she tilted her chin up in that way she did when she expected me to kiss her. We'll figure something out, I said. I'll pick you up at your parents' house after school. Then I gave her the kiss she was unconsciously asking me for. Her shoulders eased. All right. Alice dragged her back toward the trees. Edward followed with a final regretful glance at the school building, as if mourning the biology class he couldn't attend. By lunch, the entire school knew the Cullens were out sick, which in high school meant they're probably hiking, or on a yacht, or secretly royalty. Bella was fine until she wasn't. Around fifth period, she slumped across her desk and declared, "This is ridiculous. One day of sun and Forks High loses half its population." Pretty sure half the population doesn't sparkle, I muttered under my breath. She snorted into her notebook. When the last bell rang, I walked out to the parking lot and pulled out my phone. One text from Edythe. Edythe, where do you want to go? I stared at the screen for a minute, the sunlight warm on the back of my neck. Where do I want to go? The answer was immediate. Me, what about the cliffs? The spot you showed me once before. Me, even in the sun, it is off the beaten path. It'll be safe from prying eyes. A pause. Then. Edythe, let's meet at the ball field, I'll be there in 20. Bring the truck. And, maybe a blanket. A blanket. My heart kicked hard once, steady, focused, as my hand drifted, unbidden, to the pocket of my jacket. The ring wasn't there. Still hidden at home. Waiting. But just the idea of a blanket, the cliffs, sunlight, her. Yet. Maybe this was it. Not necessarily the moment, but the place. The right place. Me, okay, but it will take me longer to get there, so don't rush. See you soon, love. I locked my phone and headed for the truck, pulse steady and loud in my ears. It was time. That thought ran through my head again and again as I drove home to collect the requested blanket and the ring box. I need a casual excuse to stay in my human form, since she usually carries my clothes when I shift. Can't take the chance the feels the box and gets curious. My mind was still running in circles when I pulled into my driveway. I went straight to the drawer that held the ring and pocketed it, then went to the closet for a blanket. For having skin nearly the texture of rock, she sure did enjoy a soft blanket. I paused in the quiet of my bedroom, blanket in one hand, ring in my pocket, heartbeat climbing just a little faster than usual. 1 minute I was solid and purposeful. The next, nerves shot through me in 1,000 directions. What if she thinks it's too soon? What if I'm reading everything wrong? What if I caught myself, dragged in a breath, and shook my head. No. This wasn't panic. This was anticipation. She loved me. I loved her. And this, proposing at the cliffs where she first trusted me to show herself in the sunlight, felt right in a way nothing else ever had. I locked up, walked back to the truck, set the blanket on the passenger seat, and closed the door. Then I rested both hands on the steering wheel and let the moment settle. Today. It was going to be today. And for the first time, that didn't terrify me. It felt like stepping toward something I'd been moving toward my entire life. I turned the key in the ignition. Time to go meet Edythe. The clearing was sacred ground for the Cullen family, the place where they could move without restraint and without fear. Meeting there meant something. The blanket was on the passenger seat. The ring was in my pocket. My heart was trying to crawl out of my chest. Normal. Totally normal. When I pulled into the clearing, she was already there, standing in the shade near the tree line, hood down, hair catching just enough light to glow without giving away the secret under her skin. She wasn't pacing or anxious. Just waiting. Patient, calm, as if the whole day had shaped itself around this moment. I cut the engine and climbed out, blanket over one arm. The forest swallowed the truck noise quickly, leaving only birdsong and wind threading through the cedars. Edythe met me halfway, her steps soft on the mossy ground. "You made good time," she said, her voice carrying a quiet warmth. "I knew you would be waiting," I said. "So obviously," I rushed. A faint smile tugged at her mouth. "Of course you did." We stood close enough that I could see the tiny flecks of gold in her eyes even in the shade. She looked lighter today. As if the sun had stolen some of her tension when it rose. "I figure we should walk, enjoy some time together in nature," I said, nodding toward the narrow trail at the far end of the field. "Ready?" she asked, slipping her hand into mine. Her fingers were cool, familiar, grounding. "More than ready," I said. We walked toward the trail that led deeper into the woods, where the trees grew taller, and the ground sloped steadily upward. This was the same route she had led me on the first time she'd shown me what sunlight did to her skin. A path she'd memorized long before I ever knew it existed. And the cliff we were headed toward? No one went there. Too far, too steep, too easy to miss if you didn't know the turns by heart. Which is exactly why Edythe loved it. And exactly why it was perfect. As the trees swallowed us, her pace slowed a fraction, not enough to be noticeable to anyone else, but enough for me. She matched every step to mine, deliberately staying beside me instead of drifting ahead the way she usually did when lost in thought. "You're quiet today," she said after a moment. "So are you." "I had a long morning," she said lightly. "Alice tried to assign me a sunny day itinerary. I escaped before she could pick out a picnic basket." "That sounds like a very Alice crime." It was. "I think that because she can't see what we are doing, she wants to control it vicariously." She laughed and shook her head at the thought. We walked a few more paces before she nudged me gently with her shoulder. "Are you sure you really want to go up there today?" I swallowed. "Yeah. I am." Something unreadable flickered in her eyes. "I like that place," she said softly. "It always feels peaceful." "Yeah," I breathed. "It does." I didn't trust myself to say more. We stepped over a fallen log, the trees parting just enough that a sliver of far-off water shimmered between the branches. We were getting close. The ring sat solid and warm against my thigh. My pulse matched the rhythm of our steps. And the sunlight above the trees caught the edge of her hair just right, the same way it had the first time she showed me her secret. Perfect. The right place. And today, maybe, the right time. Chapter 151, The Right Time. Thomas POV. The higher we climbed, the quieter the forest became. The air shifted first, cooler, thinner, carrying the faint mineral bite that always came with altitude. Sound changed second, birdsong fading, wind threading through the pines in low, hollow tones that echoed somewhere far below. And then there was Edythe's hand in mine. Her grip wasn't tight. It never had to be. Just steady. Grounding. Like she knew I needed the feel of her fingers laced through mine more than I needed breath. We stepped over a patch of roots twisting across the trail, and she glanced at me again, one of those sideways check-ins so subtle only someone who knew her well would catch it. "You're thinking too loudly," she murmured. "I can almost hear you." A faint murmur in my mind. I snorted. "Trying to hear anything particular?" "I remember you telling me you had to focus on someone's mind unlike Edward who just hears everyone around him." "No," she said, almost smiling. "You just seem a little amped up and nervous today." I reached out on impulse without realizing I had, and was surprised to hear anything. I squeezed her hand and smiled, "Nothing to worry over, just my mind trying to plan stuff that doesn't really need a plan. You know, the stuff all high schoolers do at the end of mandatory schooling." We kept walking, the incline growing steeper until the trees began to thin and the light brightened. Granite jutted through the earth here and there, and patches of moss clung stubbornly to the stone. The mountain opened itself to us one step at a time. And then the trail spilled out onto the narrow ledge. The one she'd brought me to once before, to show me what she looked like under the sun. Where she halfway expected to lose me because of her abnormality, as she saw it. The one etched into my memory with surgical clarity, a place suspended between sky and stone. From the ledge, the world stretched out in rolling waves of forest below us, distant ridgelines fading into pale blue haze. No one ever came out this far, it was too steep, too hidden, too easy to miss if you didn't know what you were looking for. Which was exactly why Edythe loved it and why I was coming to love it as well. And again, why it was perfect. She stepped onto the stone, wind lifting her hair in a soft arc. Even in the shade, she glowed faintly, not enough to give away anything supernatural, just enough to make her look like she didn't quite belong to gravity. Her expression softened. "I haven't been here since, before. Before Nepal. Before everything changed. Before the person I had become stood beside her now." "It's still beautiful," I said quietly. She looked at me then, the smile small but real. "It is." I spread the blanket out near the shelter of the trees where shade curved over the stone. She lowered herself gracefully onto it, drawing her knees up, arms resting lightly around them. I sat beside her, close but not quite touching. She didn't rush anything. She never did. After a moment, her shoulder brushed mine. Just a soft, familiar contact that told me more than any words could. "Thank you for suggesting this," she said. "Today felt suffocating. Like the sun made everything too exposed. Then, quieter, being here with you, it feels like breathing again." There it was, that small fracture in her perfection that she only ever let me see. And I loved her for it. "Edythe," I said, voice rougher than it should have been. She lifted her head, eyes bright in the shaded light. The words were there. Right behind my teeth. "Will you marry me?" "Almost. Not yet. One more breath." "Instead," I said, "this place means a lot to me too." She tilted her head. "Because of the view?" "No." I turned to her fully. "Because it's where you trusted me, where you were willing to bare your soul to me. Even if you half expected that in doing so you would lose me." Something flickered behind her eyes, quick, deep, impossible to miss. "Thomas," she whispered. Wind pressed through the branches overhead, stirring the edges of the blanket. A beam of sunlight pierced the canopy, brushing over her hand. She didn't pull away. She let the light touch her. It refracted faintly across her skin, subtle, not enough to expose her secret, but enough to remind me of the first time I saw her like this. "You aren't afraid I'll stare?" I asked softly. No," she murmured. Not with you. I reached out, fingers brushing hers, letting the filtered sunlight hit us both. Let me tell you a secret. I will always stare, I said. But never for the reason you're afraid of. Her breath hitched, tiny, sharp, human in its vulnerability. She pressed her forehead briefly against mine. Thomas. This time my name wasn't caution. It was something tender. Hopeful. Her hand tightened around mine, cool and steady. This was it. Not fear. Not doubt. Just absolute clarity. The ring in my pocket felt impossibly heavy. I shifted slightly, heart hammering, and reached into my pocket. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in dawning, shimmering understanding. The filtered sunlight glimmered faintly across her skin, scattering tiny prisms over her knuckles where our hands were joined. Edythe. My voice felt thick and unsteady, but not uncertain. Her lips parted just slightly. Yes, she breathed. I drew the small velvet box from my pocket, slow and deliberate, feeling the tremor in my own fingers as I brought it into the open air between us. She inhaled sharply, no need for breath, but still taking one. Her hands hovered, frozen. Thomas Raizel, who had faced ancient clans, fought dire wolves, stood before the vulture, and survived his self-imposed exile in the Himalayas, suddenly felt weightless and fragile. I brought you here, I said quietly, because this is where everything changed for me. She blinked, golden eyes luminous. The sunlight? No. I shook my head, emotion thick. Because this is the place you trusted me. The first place you let me see who you really are. Where you stopped hiding. I know I told you that earlier, but... Damn it, I was rambling. So, I stopped and took a deep breath and focused again on Edythe. Her throat worked silently. Her fingers flexed once, barely. I realized in my time away from you, I continued, that I didn't want a life where you weren't in it. The wind whispered across the cliffside, carrying the scent of cedar and stone. Her hair lifted in soft wisps. I opened the box. The diamond caught the faintest sliver of light and ignited, scattering pale fire across the shadows beneath the trees. Edythe's eyes widened, slow, stunned, reverent. Thomas. She whispered, voice breaking around the edges. I shifted forward onto one knee, not because tradition dictated it, but because it felt right. Because she deserved the whole truth in a language the world understood. Her hand flew to her lips, an old human habit she hadn't quite shaken. Edythe Cullen, I said, the words steady even as my pulse jackhammered, I love you. Not because of what you are, or who your family is. Not because of danger or destiny or anything supernatural. I swallowed. But because you're the person who held me together when I didn't know who I was. The person who makes the world make sense. My equal. My partner. My home. Her eyes shone, not glittering, not glowing, just full. More emotion than vampire bodies were built to hold. So I'm asking, I said, lifting the ring toward her trembling hand. Will you marry me? Silence. Huge, breathless. Edythe didn't move, not even a blink. For half a second, fear slashed through me. Then she did move. She rose from her sitting position to her knees so our faces were even so fast the blanket ripped under us, her cool hands cradling mine with a desperation that stole the breath from my lungs. Yes, she whispered, voice trembling like a struck chord. Yes, Thomas. Yes. She pressed her forehead to mine, eyes closed, breath unnecessary but shaking anyway. Put it on me, she whispered, barely audible. My hands weren't steady now. Not at all. But that didn't matter. She extended her left hand, fingers trembling, actually trembling, and I slid the ring onto her finger. Perfect fit. A soft sound left her, not a sob, but something close, something ancient and fragile and full. Then her lips were on mine, cool, fierce, reverent, her hands gripping the back of my neck like she was afraid the mountain itself might take me away. I kissed her back, tasting sunlight and forever and everything in between. When she finally pulled back, her voice was a whisper of awe. "I didn't think," she said, "that forever could feel like this." I brushed my thumb over the ring shining on her hand. "Forever starts now. As much of it as I can give you." And she smiled, small, breathtaking, real. "Yes," she said. "It does." Edythe didn't stop touching the ring. She kept her hand lifted just slightly, turning it toward the faint threads of sunlight slipping between the trees. The diamond flashed in soft, fractured sparks. The skin of her hand also sparkled in the same way, just different colors. It made her look alive in a way I'd never seen. "I don't need this to know what we are," she murmured, still staring at it. "But I..." Her voice faltered for the first time since I'd known her. "I love that you wanted it." I brushed my thumb along her knuckles. "It felt like the right way to tell you I'm not going anywhere." Her lips curved. Not her usual calm, elegant smile. Something warmer. More human. "I didn't think I'd ever have this," she whispered. "Not the choice. Not the chance." "You have both," I said. A breath of wind moved through the clearing, stirring leaves around our feet. She leaned into me then, curling herself against my side, head tucked under my jaw. I wrapped the blanket around us, even though she didn't need it, I just wanted her closer. She traced slow circles on my chest. "Thomas," she whispered. "Yeah. Thank you, for choosing me." I held her tighter. "I always will." Chapter 152, Reaction. Thomas POV. We stayed on that blanket longer than I expected. Not talking much. Not moving much. Just existing in the same breath of space while the mountain held its silence around us. Edythe kept brushing her thumb over the ring, as if making sure it was actually there and not something her mind had conjured from a dream she wasn't supposed to have anymore. Every time her eyes drifted down to her hand, that same quiet expression settled over her face, wonder, disbelief, something fragile and newly formed. Something she didn't let the world see. Only me. Eventually, she shifted just enough that her cheek pressed lightly against my shoulder. "We should head back soon," she whispered. "The others will worry." I huffed a small laugh. Alice knew the moment I woke up this morning that something was going to change today. She's probably redecorating timelines as we speak. Edythe shook her head. "No way she saw this through your dark spot in her visions. I can't wait to finally surprise her for once." I chuckled, running my fingertips along her cheek. "Love, I'm almost certain the moment you allowed me to slide that ring on your finger, all her future paths shifted. Maybe not much, but enough that if she was paying any attention to you in any vision, she saw that ring on your hand." Edythe groaned softly. "Oh. I hadn't thought of that." "She'll explode. Like a supernova," I agreed. "She'll probably have the entire wedding planned out in her head before we get back to the clearing." Edythe tipped her head up, narrowing her eyes at me. "You're assuming I'm letting her plan anything." "Oh no," I said immediately. "Absolutely not. I'm not walking into that battlefield." Her lips curved. "Good." But her voice softened again, drifting into something quieter. "What will you tell your family?" she asked. I blinked. "Tell them that you're engaged." Her tone held the faintest uncertainty, as if the word felt new in her mouth. "Ah. That." I sighed. "I'm pretty sure Charlie knows it's coming. Bella will be happy," I went on after a moment. "Renee will be confused. Shocked. But happy for me." I paused, then asked, "And your family?" Edythe didn't look up, she just rested her hand over my chest again, as if listening to the heartbeat she found grounding. "They'll be surprised," she said slowly. Concerned. Protective. Carlyle will smile quietly. Esme would cry if she could. Emmett will be unbearable. Rosalie will look at you like she's calculating whether you're a good enough match. A beat. And Alice. Alice will dismantle the furniture in pure excitement. Jasper will sit back and watch it all, laughing in his quiet way. She paused a moment. Edward. He will brood and probably pout, but he will keep any objections to himself if he knows what's good for him. And eventually he will be happy for me. I snorted. Sounds about right. But they will all accept it, Edythe added, firmer now. They will accept us. I pressed a kiss to the crown of her head. Good. Because I'm not giving you back. That earned me a small, soft laugh, the kind that cracked open the frozen edges of the world. She pulled back enough to meet my eyes. We should tell them together. Of course. Another beat passed, long enough to feel the weight of everything waiting at the bottom of the mountain. School. Bella. Charlie. Edward. Alice. The Volturi someday. The pack. Leah. She was somewhere on the far side of these woods right now, wrestling with her own truths. I wondered if she'd shifted tonight. If she'd read even a page of the journals I'd given her. But that was for another day. Today belonged to Edythe. All right, she murmured, rising to her feet with that liquid grace only she had. She offered me her hand. Let's go. I stood, folded the blanket over my arm, brushed pine needles from my jeans. The sun was sliding low behind the ridge, catching the ring on her hand, once, twice, sending muted rainbow fire over her skin. Edythe saw me looking. Her fingers curled around mine, firm and certain. You realize, she said quietly, that nothing about our lives is simple from here on out. I smiled. I didn't ask for her simple. Her answering smile was small, but it reached her eyes completely. Neither did I. We started back down the trail, step by step, toward the clearing where the others would already be waiting. Hand in hand. My mind clear and solid, everything felt exactly where it needed to be. Third-person POV Cullen House. The Cullen house was quiet in a very specific way, not tense, not worried, just waiting. Alice was the only one who couldn't pretend to be calm. She drifted around the great room like static, too restless to sit, too wired to stand still. Esme watched her with fond patience from the sofa, a half-finished sketchbook open in her lap. Jasper tracked the emotional currents with subtle amusement, smoothing edges only when Alice's excitement spiked high enough to rattle the light fixtures. Carlyle sat in his favorite armchair with a medical journal open, though he hadn't turned a page in 10 minutes. Rosalie was seated at the large desktop computer at the far end of the room, scrolling through listings for rare car parts with surgical focus. Esme insisted anything involving grease stayed firmly in the garage, so Rosalie's hunt was digital this evening. Edward, meanwhile, was pacing a single, controlled circuit, 2 steps toward the stairs, 2 back to the fireplace, until he caught himself and forced the motion still. Surprised his actions hadn't brought about jokes at his expense about his restless wait to go be with Bella once Charlie went to sleep. Emmett sprawled across the love seat like a coiled spring pretending to be a couch potato. Every so often, he glanced at the front door with a grin too wide to be legal. He and Jasper exchanged one of their "we promised not to say anything" looks. Rosalie didn't turn from her screen when she muttered, "Emmett, if your face stretches any further, it might tear." Emmett only grinned harder. Alice suddenly spun toward them. "Stop being loud." "We aren't talking," Emmett protested. "Your feelings are loud," Alice snapped. "All 3 of you." Jasper lifted a calming hand in apology, but she shot him a glare too. Esme set down her sketchbook. "Sweetheart, maybe sit for a minute." "I can't," Alice squeaked, vibrating in place. "Everything's shifting. Future threads are rearranging like lunatics, and I can't look too closely because someone She pointed accusingly at Edward. "Wool snoop." Edward frowned, finally focusing on something besides his absence from Bella's side. "You're hiding something." "Yes," Alice said bluntly. "A surprise. For Edythe. And I am not letting you ruin it." Edward's eyes narrowed. He didn't push, not when Alice was intentionally thinking of absolutely nothing. Carlyle closed his journal. "I believe that would be Thomas's truck." The room stilled as everyone listened. A few still not sure why all this attention was directed to Thomas and Edythe's return from their outing. The truck engine cut off and the closing of doors were heard. A moment later, the soft thrum of familiar footsteps approached, too balanced, too synchronized to be human steps on the gravel walkway. The front door opened. Edythe stepped inside first. The change was subtle, but unmistakable. A brightness around her. Something delicate and new in the way she held herself, like a violin string tuned to perfect resonance. Thomas followed her in closely, shutting the door behind him. And on Edythe's left hand, the faint glint of a ring. Alice emitted a sound like a suppressed shriek exploding through her teeth. She slapped both hands over her mouth to contain the rest. Esme gasped softly, her whole expression melting into joy. Carlyle's quiet smile deepened. Emmett punched Jasper in triumph. Jasper took the blow with a quiet grin. Rosalie finally swiveled from the computer, assessing the pair with sharp eyes, then giving one slow, satisfied nod. Approval, Rosalie style. Edward stared. At the ring. At Thomas. At his sister. Then at Alice. "You knew." Alice beamed beneath her hands. "I didn't look," she insisted, words muffled. "Not directly. But the moment she kept showing up in the future with a ring, I stopped paying attention so I wouldn't spoil it." Edward exhaled through his nose. "Thank you," he said dryly. Edythe stepped forward. Esme swept her into a warm, lingering embrace. "Oh, sweetheart, congratulations." Thomas dipped his head respectfully. "Thank you." Carlyle approached next. "We're very happy for both of you," he said, sincerity ringing clear. Emmett barreled over. "Yes. Finally. Jasper and I have been sitting on this for weeks." Rosalie folded her arms. "You nearly blew it every time Edythe walked in the room. You are lucky I didn't ask about what secret you were so poorly hiding from me." Emmett blinked innocently. "My restraint was incredible." Jasper chuckled. "Your restraint was non-existent." Edythe raised an eyebrow. "What exactly did you do?" "Nothing." Emmett yelped, voice cracking adorably. "Just existed." Loudly. Thomas shook his head, amused. Edward still hadn't spoken. Edythe turned toward him. The room quieted. Edward studied her face for a long moment, the brightness, the certainty, the peace. This all hit doubly because of his deal with Bella. That he would only turn her himself if she agreed to marry him. Finally, his features softened. "Congratulations," he said, stepping forward to pull her into a brief but sincere embrace. "Truly." Edythe relaxed fully for the first time since stepping inside. "Thank you." Alice couldn't contain it anymore. "Oh my God, when's the wedding?" "Alice," Edythe warned, voice dangerously calm. Jasper gently placed a hand on Alice's shoulder. "Breathe." "I don't need to breathe," she squeaked. "Then metaphorically breathe." Alice pouted. "Fine. But I am celebrating violently in my head." Jasper winced. "I can feel that." The family began to gather around them, not crowding, but embracing, welcoming, forming the protective circle they were built to be. Thomas slipped his fingers through Edythe's. She held his hand like it was the axis of her world. And in the soft golden light of the Cullen home, the future began to take shape. Chapter 153, The Unknown Thread. Leaving the Cullen house felt strangely harder than I expected. Maybe because it meant stepping out of the warm bubble of congratulations and into the real world, where Charlie Swan existed, armed with his instincts, his police badge, and an uncanny ability to read exactly what I didn't want him to. My thoughts also drifted to the girl I considered my sister in all but name. We may have grown apart a bit since our arrival here in Forks, but not in a bad way. We had both just grown to rely on people besides each other. I reached out for Edythe's hand and asked, "Bella and Charlie? Or should we hold off until tomorrow?" She seemed to think for a moment. "Let's get all the family on the same day. I would hate for them to feel less important than telling my family." I knew that after our talk a few weeks back that Charlie wouldn't be too surprised about this. But I was willing to bet it would still be a shock nonetheless. We pulled up the Swan driveway. Bella's truck sat crooked like always. Charlie's cruiser was parked with precise alignment that screamed cop from 50 feet away. Before I could knock, the door opened. Bella stood there mid-step, smiling on instinct. "Hey, you." She blinked. Then blinked again. Her mouth opened soundlessly as her eyes zeroed in on Edythe's left hand. Before she had time to react, Charlie's voice echoed from the living room. "Bells? Who is at the door?" "It better not be Edward, your visiting hours are over for the day." I lifted my voice so it would travel to the front room. "It's me and Edythe, Uncle Charlie. Got something to talk about?" "Well, get in here, I'm not paying to heat the outdoors," came the gruff reply. Bella seemed to shake off her stupor. "Yeah, come in," she managed. "Please come in." I stepped into the house that I had called home for a time nearly a year back. It felt familiar, comfortable even. I made my way to the front room where Charlie was watching a basketball game. He must have muted it when we knocked. I wasn't sure if it was his attention to detail, Bella's shocked gaze still locked on Edythe's left hand, or a reflection of light. But within seconds of entering the front room, Charlie's eyes locked onto the ring I given Edythe. "Oh, hell," he muttered. Bella made a strangled noise. "Dad." He ignored her and pointed a finger between Edythe and me, squinting with every ounce of suspicious dad energy he possessed. "Tell me she's not pregnant." "What?" Bella shouted, nearly face-planting into the coffee table. Edythe's face locked into a look I had no name for, and despite myself I felt my ears heat up. "No. She isn't," I said quickly. We haven't crossed that line yet." Charlie nodded once. "Good. Just covering the bases. Renee and I got married early because, well, doesn't matter." Bella groaned into both hands. "I hate everything happening right now." I cleared my throat. "Uncle Charlie." I asked her because I love her. Not because I had to. Charlie looked at me for a long beat. His expression softened in that subtle Charlie Swan way, barely there but unmistakable. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess I can see that. Sorry for jumping to conclusions." Bella crossed her arms and stared at Edythe's hand again. "Okay. How long has this been?" "No, don't tell me. I don't want to know." "Actually, I do. But I don't." I smiled at Bella's stumbling words. "I have had it, well, not planned, but ready for a while now. Today just felt right." Bella's expression softened a fraction despite the swirling shock. "It's a beautiful ring," she whispered, leaning in to look at it. "Really beautiful." "Thank you," Edythe murmured. Charlie's eyes narrowed with dad-level precision. "So, what's the timeline? You rushing this? Doing anything foolish? Running across state lines?" "Dad," Bella hissed. "No timeline yet," I said. "We just knew we wanted this." Edythe broke in. "We haven't really talked about it, but I'm not interested in a long wait." Charlie exhaled. Just be sure now. Be sure later. Both matter." We sat around for another half an hour talking about this and that before we said our goodbyes and went home. Edythe POV. Thomas fell asleep faster than I expected. Not instantly, he never did when I was with him, but gradually, like drifting down through layers of warmth until his breathing settled into the soft, steady rhythm that meant his mind was finally quiet. Human sleep has fascinated me since I lost the ability to do so. The vulnerability of it. The trust. The way the entire body surrendered without hesitation. But watching him sleep was something entirely different. His heartbeat was the anchor I hadn't known I needed. Slow. Strong. Warm in a way my body could never mimic. He lay half-turned toward me, one arm curled loosely around my waist, fingers resting at the hem of my shirt like he'd reached for me even as he let go of wakefulness. The ring on my finger caught a faint glimmer from the floodlight outside the window. A ring. Mine. My chest tightened, not painfully, but with a phantom pressure I had no word for. A sensation too expansive, too full, something like awe and fear and joy braided together. I lifted my hand slightly, turning it in the soft light. A symbol. A promise. A future. A future I never believed belonged to someone like me. I could hear every movement in the house, every shift of the settling wood, every soft breath Thomas took, but my mind was still, unusually still. No frenzy of possibilities. No backward spiraling toward memories of what I had been. Just this moment. Just him. Thomas murmured something unintelligible in his sleep and tightened his arm around me for a heartbeat before relaxing again. Instinctive. Protective. Completely unaware of how easily I could break the world around him. And yet, he had never once feared me. Never once hesitated to touch me, even when my skin was cold or unyielding or glowing with sunlight. He had asked me to marry him. He had looked at me and asked for forever. And I had said yes without a single shred of doubt. But now, as the room dimmed further and night deepened, the practical implications began to form. Not fears, just truths. Responsibilities. Decisions. Weddings. The thought made my lips press together. My family would expect celebration. Alice would crave a spectacle. Emmett would want a party large enough to frighten wildlife in 3 counties. Esme and Rosalie would sew dresses if given even 10 seconds of uninterrupted enthusiasm. But that wasn't what I wanted. Not for this moment. Not for us. Well, maybe not all of it. I really wanted to see him in a tux, and I wonder if a wedding dress would feel different than a normal dress? I looked down at Thomas again. His stark white hair had fallen across part of his forehead, and I brushed it back gently. Carefully. A feather-light touch. He didn't stir. A small, quiet warmth unfurled in my chest, something so painfully human it almost frightened me. I wanted something small. Not because I was hiding. Not because of what I was. But because the most important moments of my existence had never been loud. They'd been quiet. Tender. Rooted in trust. Like the cliffs. Like today. Like right now, listening to the heartbeat that grounded me more profoundly than gravity ever could. A large wedding would make me feel like a strange artifact on display. A spectacle of human mimicry. But a small ceremony. A private promise. A moment shared only with those who understood the depth of it. That felt right. Necessary. Mine. He shifted again, face relaxing completely, unaware of the way my entire world was reorganizing itself around him. I leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to his temple. I want something small, I whispered into the darkness. Just you. Just us. Just the people who matter. He didn't wake. But his breathing deepened, as if something inside him had heard me anyway. I lay back beside him, letting the quiet settle over us like a blanket, letting the decision crystallize in my mind. Tomorrow, I would tell him. Tonight. I would stay here. In the place where I was beginning to understand what forever could feel like. And then, unexpectedly, Leah Clearwater's face flickered across my mind. A quick, jarring intrusion I hadn't invited. Her expression in the woods. That look, sharp, longing, angry at herself. Her thoughts, the ones I'd reached for reflexively. Please let him be mine. Please. Just once, let something be mine. The memory struck deeper than I expected. Why had that moment stayed with me? Why did the echo of her pain settle in my chest in a way so few things ever did? Not jealousy. Not possessiveness. Not pity. Something else. Maybe. Understanding? I knew what it felt like to be so alone yet surrounded by other people's happiness. Hating myself for the perceived lack of something that stopped me from having that same happiness. Leah, I whispered into the quiet, tasting the name with a strange mix of realization and reluctance. It wasn't fear. It wasn't desire. It wasn't threat. It was the recognition of a shape taking form in my thoughts, something I hadn't examined long enough to define. The wolf girl wasn't my responsibility. She wasn't my burden. She wasn't even my friend. And yet, neither was she nothing. She mattered to Thomas. And because of that, she mattered to me. A soft, impossible tug formed low in my chest, an emotional thread I absolutely didn't want to inspect too closely yet. What would our engagement do to her? Would it deepen that ache she tried so hard to hide behind her rage? Would it make her feel even more alone in a world she already believed had no place for her? Why should that concern me so deeply? Why did my mind keep circling back to the look on her face? To the way her thoughts cracked open with quiet desperation. To the way she stared at Thomas as though he were a lifeline that would save her from a nightmare she couldn't wake from herself. I shifted slightly, curling closer into the warmth of him, as if grounding myself would keep the questions from pulling me into places I wasn't ready to go. Tomorrow, I whispered again. This time, not about the wedding, not about the conversation I would have with him. Tomorrow, I will also begin untangling this new thread inside me. The one shaped like a fierce, hurting wolf with too much fire and nowhere safe to burn it. Tonight, though. Tonight belonged to the man who had asked me for forever. I rested my forehead lightly against his shoulder and listened as his heartbeat soothed the last edge of uncertainty. Whatever this new awareness of Leah was. Whatever it meant. Whatever it would become. I would face it when the sun returned. Because for the first time in more than a century, I understood something profoundly simple. Love, real love, did not shrink to fit boundaries. It grew. It made room. Even for things I hadn't expected. Even for people I hadn't yet let myself fully see. And that realization. That quiet, stubborn truth settling in my chest. It was terrifying. And also, strangely, beautifully right. Chapter 154, Rumors and Realities. Thomas POV. I woke before sunrise. Not surprising, my body had always been an early riser, but today the restlessness hit harder than usual. Yesterday had been big. Good, but big. My muscles felt electric beneath my skin, like they were demanding movement. Training sounded perfect. Edythe was already gone, hunting with Alice. A note sat on the nightstand in her looping script. Go break something. I know you're itching for it. She knew me too well. I grabbed my phone and put in a call to my training partners, and they were happy to oblige. I pulled on workout pants and a shirt, then headed for the Cullen clearing. I ran in my human form with the shifter's strength that had become my normal except when I was at school these days. The forest was still soaked in early morning grey when I arrived, steam rising off me as my body temperature was so high. Emmett was already there, bouncing on the balls of his feet like a boxer waiting for the bell. Jasper stood to the side, calm, collected, emotionless in the way only he could be before a fight. Took you long enough, Emmett boomed. I've been ready for round 1 since, like, yesterday. Morning to you too, I said, stretching my shoulders. Jasper nodded once in greeting. You wanted a spar? Yeah. Something to clear the mind. Then you picked the right two, Emmett laughed. He launched first, of course he did. A blur of inhuman momentum, fist cutting toward my ribs. I slid left, caught his wrist, pivoted, and used his forward force to flip him cleanly over my shoulder. He slammed into the ground hard enough to rattle branches. Yes! Emmett shouted from the dirt. I missed this. Jasper came next, quieter, faster, and infinitely more dangerous. He wasn't brute force like Emmett. He was precision. Strategy. Every strike probing, testing, adjusting his approach to me with unsettling speed. But he wasn't the only one who'd learned. I blocked, dodged, let my body fall into the strange rhythm that felt half primal, half instinct. My heels dug into the earth as I countered with a strike that forced him to leap backward. His eyes lit with something like satisfaction. You're getting faster, he noted. Or you're getting predictable. Jasper snorted. Hardly. The two came at me at once. It was chaos. Beautiful chaos. Strength slamming into technique. Jasper trying to slip past my guard while Emmett tried to bulldoze me outright. I stayed in human form deliberately, refusing the further tug of tiger instincts that begged to join the fray. Emmett grabbed me around the waist from behind. Jasper swept my legs. I twisted, planted a palm, and shoved upward, sending Jasper skidding across pine needles. Emmett tightened his grip. So I dropped my weight, broke free, spun, and drove an elbow into his sternum. He flew backward 10 feet, laughing even as he crashed into a tree that soon fell over. God, I love this kid. Jasper circled again, eyes calculating. You're holding back. Obviously. And why, he drawled, would you do something foolish like that? Because we agreed on a spar, I said, rolling my shoulders, not a mauling. Emmett stood up sharply. Wait. Wait. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Jasper's smile was slow and dangerous. Show us. The request hit me like a thrown dagger. They wanted to see it. Not the tiger. Not the man. The thing in between. I exhaled once and pulled more of the tiger out. My skin rippled as the white fur emerged. A grunt left my mouth as my teeth sharpened and grew to meet the new shape of my mouth as my skull changed to a more tiger-like appearance. My spine lengthened, adding at least 4 inches to my height. Muscles bulged and then tightened. Claws, not fully formed, but close, slid halfway from my fingertips as my hands took on a look of mix between paw and hand. My shirt tore down the back, now just hanging on loosely. Emmett stopped grinning for half a second as the weight of the form settled over the clearing. My silhouette was still undeniably human, but everything about me was wrong in the way predators are wrong to prey. The final shift slid through my legs, calves tightening, stance widening instinctively, center of gravity dropping into something fast, powerful, and built for explosive movement. A complete balance between man and monster. I clenched my hands and then shook them out as I stretched out in my new shift. Bending at the knees and rolling my shoulders, I tore the remains of my shirt off and tossed it aside, letting Jasper and Emmett have a good look at my new form. When I lifted my head, both vampires went utterly still. Emmett whispered, "Oh hell yes." Jasper's expression sharpened, all amusement gone. "Thomas. Your aura just spiked." I grinned, and I knew it showed a little too much tooth. "Ready?" I asked. They didn't answer. They attacked. It lasted 6 seconds. Jasper blurred toward my right. I caught him mid-strike, spun him, and threw him into Emmett with a force that would have shattered boulders. They crashed together, rolled, regained footing, and came again. Too slow. Too predictable. Too easy. I moved with something deeper than instinct, something older, and swept Jasper's legs out while backhanding Emmett into a tree that groaned violently under the impact. Both vampires lay sprawled in the wreckage, limbs bent at odd angles. Emmett wheezed, "Dude, marry me." "You're married," Jasper muttered. "Details." Jasper sat up, hair full of dirt, eyes bright with a rare exhilaration. "That form is not meant for friendly sparring." "No," I admitted, letting the hybrid edge drain away. Bones shifted. Claws receded. Breath steadied. "But you asked." Emmett slapped the ground. "Again." "No," Jasper said immediately. "Not until we figure out what that was." I shrugged. "A middle state. Between man and tiger." "No," Jasper said again, eyes narrowing. "That was something else." Emmett grinned like a kid at Christmas. "It was awesome, that's what it was." I breathed out slowly, feeling the lingering electricity under my skin. Yet, this was exactly what I needed. Thomas POV after school. By the end of the school day, I was pretty sure half of Forks High believed Edythe and I had eloped in Vegas. The first hint was the whispering in the hall. Not the subtle kind Forks students had the volume control of malfunctioning appliances. I heard. "Is that an engagement ring?" "No way." Cullen level hot and engaged. "Does that mean they're having a baby?" "Dude, think about how impossible that is." Twilight Zone. Anything is possible. By lunchtime it had escalated into, maybe it's a promise ring. Maybe it's a threat ring. Maybe she bought it for herself. Maybe he proposed on a cliff and they almost died. Maybe he's secretly royalty. Bella nearly spit her drink when she heard that one. Edythe handled the rumors with perfect composure, chin up, serene expression, completely unbothered. Which, naturally, only made them worse. Meanwhile, I spent most of the day fielding sideways looks from classmates who clearly expected me to confirm or deny something. Or perhaps spontaneously combust. During English, Angela leaned across the aisle and whispered, "Congratulations." I blinked. "On what?" She gave me a look. "Thomas, the ring?" "On Edythe Cullen's hand?" "The ring she keeps glancing at every 30 seconds. "Oh," I said. "That." Her smile softened. "It's sweet. I'm happy for you too." She sat back in her seat before I could answer, leaving me with a warmth in my chest and a strange, surreal awareness that everyone knew. Or thought they knew. Then, during last period, reality hit me in the face with all the grace of an angry rhino. We were reading silently when I absently rubbed my thumb over the base of my own left ring finger where a ring should go. And the thought landed. I can't wear one. Not unless I was prepared to destroy it every time I shifted. Metal couldn't survive that kind of structural overhaul. I pictured it, gold snapping, silver warping, gemstones skittering across the ground while I came out of a shift looking like an idiot sifting through pine needles for jewelry. No thanks. I leaned back in my chair, letting the reality settle. Edythe had a ring. I didn't. I couldn't. Would that bother her? Probably not. She wasn't sentimental about objects, she was sentimental about meaning. But still, it felt lopsided. By the time the final bell rang, my hand kept drifting to that empty space, like habit was trying to form around something that would never be there. Outside, Edythe was waiting near the truck, no surprise, no fanfare, just her, leaning lightly against the passenger door. She smiled when she saw me, soft, warm, something private even in a crowded parking lot. "Rumors have spread," she said, voice quiet and amused. "I noticed." "Anything outrageous?" "Someone said we eloped on a cliff." She tilted her head. "That one isn't entirely inaccurate." I huffed a laugh, and then, unbidden, my eyes dropped to the ring. Her smile faded slightly. "What is it?" I hesitated. Don't think I can wear a ring. With shifting. It'll break. Understanding flickered instantly across her expression. Oh. Thomas. She took my hand gently, lacing our fingers. The ring isn't what matters. You are. I know. I squeezed her hand. Still feels strange. Like I'm missing something. You're not. Her thumb brushed the back of my knuckles. You gave me a symbol that would survive my eternity. I don't need one on your hand to confirm your promise. I shrugged awkwardly. Guess I'll just have to show it in other ways. Her smile returned, slow and luminous. I look forward to those. A beat passed as students filtered around us, giving us the not-so-subtle stare and walk treatment. Then Edythe leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. Besides, she murmured, I like that mine makes it obvious. I blinked. Obvious? That I'm taken, she said simply. My heart did something embarrassing in response. We climbed into the truck, the rumors swirling behind us like dust in the road as I started the engine. Tomorrow would bring more whispers. More questions. More complications. But for now? I had Edythe beside me, her ring catching the light, and the faint imprint of her fingers still warm against my own. And even without a ring, I didn't feel like I was missing anything at all. Chapter 155, Neutral Ground. Edythe POV. Thomas ate with the kind of focus only humans possessed, every motion warm and alive. I enjoyed watching him, but tonight, I needed a moment alone. There were things he couldn't be part of. Not yet. I'm going to step into the living room for a moment, I told him lightly. He looked up mid-bite, brow lifting. Everything okay? Perfectly. I brushed my fingers over his shoulder as I passed. Eat. I'll be right back. He nodded and returned to his plate, unaware of the storm gathering at the edges of our future. I crossed into the living room, switched on the side lamp, and sat where I could still hear his heartbeat but not the precise rhythm of his breathing. His presence steadied me, but this part needed clarity. On the small table by the sofa sat a relic of human habit. A Forks phone book. I lifted it with a soft huff of amusement. Thomas had panicked trying to reach Leah last week, ending up going through Sam out of desperation and never once thought to look in here. A century of practice had taught me the usefulness of the mundane. I flipped to the CS. Clearwater, Harry and Sue. The number and address sat cleanly beneath the name. I dialed. Confident Thomas wouldn't try to listen in, even if he could have heard from the kitchen. The phone rang twice. Clearwater Residence, a young male voice answered, cheerful and suspicious all at once. Hello, I said gently. This is Edythe Cullen. May I speak with Leah, please? There was a sharp inhale. Yet. Hang on. He did not cover the receiver. Leah. Phone. It's A. Cullen. I winced. Of course. Leah's voice came next, distant but unmistakable. Which one? A girl one, Seth whispered loudly. Footsteps followed. Irritated ones. Then. What do you want? Leah asked, clipped and defensive. Hello, Leah. This is Edythe, I said evenly. I'd like to speak with you. In person. Tomorrow. Neutral ground. Silence buzzed through the line. I continued, calmly, Thomas's Rock. 7 a.m. More silence. Longer this time. Then. Fine, she said. And she hung up. I lowered the phone gently back into its cradle. A conversation set. A storm coming. A thread inside me tugging in ways I wasn't ready to define. Break. Thomas woke at his usual time. I loved watching him sleep, loved the trust in it. The way he allowed himself to exist in such a helpless state beside me without fear. Humans were so fragile when they slept, and yet he never once hesitated to rest within reach of my hands. His breathing shifted first, the subtle change that told me he was surfacing. Then his eyes opened, and he sat up, stretching his arms wide as he yawned. "Good morning, my love," I said, smiling. He turned toward me with a sleepy grin and leaned in automatically, then stopped himself short. I couldn't help the soft smile that followed. He was remembering our agreement, no kisses before brushing his teeth. Morning breath, to my senses, was more than a little abhorrent. I had tolerated it in the beginning, but after some gentle advice from Esme, I had finally confessed the issue to him. He'd taken it in stride, like everything else I asked of him. He stood and stretched again, working the stiffness from sleeping in one position all night. "Give me a few moments, love." He disappeared into the bathroom, beginning his morning routine. When he returned, he came straight to me and pressed the kiss I'd been waiting for to my lips. It had become a habit, a necessary one for me. The day felt off if I didn't get that kiss. The day's intent was already written into him. Training. Movement. Impact. Emmett and Jasper would be waiting, and Thomas's body knew it. I watched him dress, struck again by how deeply these small, ordinary moments mattered to me now. I moved into the kitchen and prepared eggs for him, another morning ritual I savored. Once he'd finished eating and turned for the door, I called after him. "Go easy on the clearing," I said lightly. Last time I was there, it looked like a hurricane had gone through. Trees everywhere with Emmett-sized chunks missing from them. He smiled over his shoulder. "No promises." Then he was gone. Now it was my turn. And I suspected my morning would be no less demanding. Thomas's rock lay waiting, patient as stone always was. I dressed with care, neutral, unassuming, nothing that suggested spectacle or dominance. If Leah Clearwater arrived already braced for confrontation, I would not give her further reason. As I moved through the forest, I let my thoughts sharpen. I wasn't there to apologize. Nor to explain. Nor to defend my choices. I was there because Thomas cared. And because, unexpectedly, so did I. Leah's face returned to me unbidden, not as she presented herself to the world, all edges and fury, but as she had been in that unguarded moment I had touched by accident. The thought that had cracked through her mind, raw and aching. "Please. Just once. Let something be mine." The want in it had startled me. Not because I understood it completely. But because I understood it enough. I stepped into the clearing early, resting my hand against the familiar stone. The forest hummed quietly around me, aware but uninterested. I waited. I sensed her before I saw her. The forest shifted, not in sound, but in attention. Birds stilled. Small animals fled without panic, simply choosing distance. The ground itself seemed to brace. Leah Clearwater did not arrive quietly. Grey fur slipped between the trees like smoke-given muscle, paws placing themselves with deliberate care on the moss and stone. She stayed just inside the tree line, broad shoulders squared, head low, eyes fixed on me with the unblinking intensity of a predator that did not trust what it was facing. She had already made a circle around me to ensure I was alone, and this wasn't some ambush. But she still tested the air with her nose. She was beautiful like this, not in the fragile way humans admired, but in something older. Purpose-built. Dangerous. And wary. I did not move. I kept my hands visible. Empty. Resting lightly against the stone at my back. I did not sit. I did not advance. Neutral ground meant neutral posture. "You don't have to stay shifted," I said calmly into the quiet. Her lips peeled back, just enough to show teeth. The thought hit me a heartbeat later, sharp and defensive. "I'm not giving you my throat." There it was. I inclined my head slightly. "I'm not asking for it." Her ears twitched. The wolf's body stilled, not relaxing, but recalibrating. I continued, keeping my voice even. You came because you wanted control of the situation. Staying in this form gives you that. I understand. Her eyes narrowed. You don't understand anything about me. I understand more than you think, I replied gently. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Her thoughts spiked then, instinctive, reflexive. Don't. I can hear you, I said softly. Your thoughts. As clearly as if you were speaking. That did it. She recoiled half a step, muscles coiling tight beneath her fur, a low sound rumbling in her chest. Rage. Fear. Violation, all tangled together. You shouldn't be able to. I know, I said quickly, before that fury could tip into action. And I'm not here to exploit it. I didn't ask for this ability. But it exists. Which means you don't need to force yourself into a human body to speak with me. Her mind lashed out, sharp and jagged. Then stop listening. I met her gaze steadily. I will, if you want me to. But right now, you're broadcasting because you're angry. And because you're afraid. That struck something. Her breathing slowed. Just a fraction. I took that opening, not pushing, not retreating. I asked to meet you here because this place matters to Thomas, I said. And because it is neutral. No pack. No coven. No audience. Her thoughts churned, suspicion layered over resentment. You're here because of him. Yes, I said. But not only because of him. That earned me a sharp, incredulous flash of thought. Don't lie to me. I'm not, I answered. If I were, you'd already know. She went still again. Completely this time. The wolf's head tilted slightly, not submission, but reassessment. I let the silence stretch. Let her decide. Finally, the thought came, quieter, edged with bitter humor. So what? You came to tell me to stay away? To remind me he's yours now? I felt the weight of that assumption. The ache behind it. No, I said simply. I came to make sure you didn't hear it from someone else first. That stopped her cold. Her thoughts flickered, confusion breaking through the hostility. Hear what? I held her gaze, steady and unflinching. I'm engaged to Thomas. I held up my left hand showing the ring Thomas had placed there. The impact was immediate. Her mind went white-hot, then abruptly, devastatingly empty, like something had been knocked loose inside her and hadn't landed yet. Her body didn't move. But her thoughts shattered. Of course you are. I did not interrupt. Did not soften it. Did not apologize. I didn't come here to ask for your blessing, I continued quietly. And I didn't come to demand anything of you. I came because I respect you enough to say it to your face. Or to your mind. Her breath came faster now, the wolf's chest rising and falling. You think that makes this better? No, I said honestly. I think it makes it honest. Silence pressed in around us again. Then, beneath the anger, beneath the grief, something else surfaced. Does he know you're here? No. That answer landed harder than any admission could have. Leah's thoughts flared, sharp, chaotic, and wounded. You came out here without telling him. Yes, I said calmly. Because this conversation isn't about what Thomas wants. Her head lifted a fraction, eyes narrowing further. You don't get to decide that. I'm not deciding anything for you, I replied. I'm deciding what kind of person I intend to be. The wolf's claws sank slightly into the earth, tearing moss. Anger surged, but beneath it, confusion. She hadn't expected this angle. Hadn't expected me to withhold Thomas rather than wield him. Then why are you here? She demanded. Really? I rested my palm against the stone behind me, grounding myself in its solidity. Because I know what it's like, I said quietly, to stand at the edge of someone else's happiness and realize there's no place for you in it. To feel like the world rearranged itself without asking your permission. Her thoughts jolted. That was too close. I won't pretend to understand your pain completely, I continued. But I recognize the shape of it. And I won't let you be blindsided by something that will hurt you more if it comes from anyone else. The forest remained unnaturally still. Then, raw and unguarded, the thought slipped through before she could stop it. He was never mine to lose. I didn't respond immediately. Let that truth breathe between us. No, I said at last. And I am not sure you have lost him. What do you know about tigers and their mating habits? Chapter 156, Being Seen and Its Consequences. Edythe POV. And I am not sure you have lost him. What do you know about tigers and their mating habits? The question landed like a stone dropped into still water. Leah's thoughts flared instantly, sharp and defensive. Don't play games with me. I'm not, I said evenly. I don't have the luxury of, or interest in, games. Her ears flattened, hackles rising just slightly, not an attack response, but irritation at being cornered into listening. Then say what you mean. I met her gaze and did exactly that. Tigers, I said calmly, do not bond the way wolves do. Their connections are not built on hierarchy or exclusion. They are, layered. Earned. Chosen again and again. Her thoughts stuttered. So, I continued, loving Thomas does not narrow him. It does not lock him into a single shape or role. And it does not erase what he sees in others, if they are brave enough to let themselves be seen. Her mind recoiled, then circled back, wary. You're telling me he could choose more than one. I am telling you, I replied, that he already chooses with honesty. What remains undecided is whether you will allow yourself to be part of that truth, or keep punishing him for not being something he was never meant to be. The wolf went still. Not frozen. Listening. You're engaged, she thought, bitterness bleeding through. You've already won. I shook my head once, precise. This is not a contest, I said. And if you think of it that way, you will lose, regardless of the outcome. Her thoughts spiked again, confused, angry, aching. Then what are you saying? I stepped away from the stone just enough to remove any sense of barrier between us. I am saying that Thomas does not belong to me the way that the pack taught you that people belong to each other, I said quietly. And he does not belong to you in the way you have come to believe longing must end with imprinting or nothing. Her breath came faster now. You just share him. The word carried disbelief. Not accusation. Not hope. Just raw incredulity. I would not deny him honesty, I answered. Or deny you the chance to stand beside us. The forest seemed to hush entirely. Leah's thoughts slowed, reorganized, pain no longer lashing outward, but folding inward, becoming something sharper. You're not telling me to stay away. No. You're not telling me he's off limits. No. You're telling me to decide whether I want him badly enough to face what that means. Yes. The realization struck her hard. Even if that means I'm not the only one. I held her gaze without flinching. Especially then. Her claws sank into the soil unconsciously, tearing moss and earth. And you're fine with that? I am not fine with lies, I corrected. I am not fine with resentment. And I am not fine with watching someone I have come to care about tear herself apart pretending she feels nothing. Her thoughts cracked, not shattered, but split open. You're giving me something dangerous. Yes, I said softly. You're giving me something to fight for. I inclined my head once. That is yours to decide. The wolf lifted her head then, posture changing, no longer defensive, no longer circling. Focused. And if I choose to fight? Then do it honestly, I said. Not with anger. Not with sabotage. Not with silence. Her thoughts sharpened, resolve beginning to burn through the grief. I make him see me. Yes. Not as a mistake. Yes. Not as something that didn't happen. Yes. Silence fell between us again, but this time, it was not empty. It was charged. Finally, Leah took a step back, eyes never leaving mine. You're terrifying. I allowed myself the faintest smile. So I've been told. She turned toward the trees, pausing only once. You didn't take him from me. No, I said. But you didn't give him to me either. That was never mine to do. She vanished into the forest without another word. I remained by the stone, listening as the woods gradually resumed their rhythm. I had not promised her a place. I had not offered her comfort. I had done something far more dangerous. I had given her truth. And whatever she chose to do with it, Thomas would feel the consequences. Leah POV. I didn't run. That was the first thing that surprised me. I put distance between us, sure, down the slope, through the thickest brush, far enough that the stone and the clearing and Edythe's impossible calm couldn't reach me with one more sentence, but I didn't bolt like my body expected. No blind panic. No frantic flight. Just, control. Like if I moved carefully enough, whatever she'd just handed me wouldn't explode in my hands. I stopped in a hollow where the moss grew fat and dark, where the ground stayed damp even when the rest of the forest dried out. The air smelled like cedar and old rain. My lungs worked too fast anyway. Edythe's voice kept replaying, clear as if she'd said it right beside my ear. I am not fine with lies. I shook my head hard, ears flicking, trying to throw the words off like water. Because that was what she'd done, she'd taken everything I'd been trying not to name, or even think about, and laid it out like a map. Not with cruelty. Not with triumph. With that terrifying, steady honesty, like she didn't even know how to be petty. And the worst part was the line that wouldn't let me breathe around it. Someone I have come to care about. Care. Not Thomas cares. Not Thomas asked me to. Not it would be inconvenient if you fell apart and caused problems. Care. I growled low in my throat, pacing a tight circle until the dirt tore under my claws. The wolf in me wanted action, wanted to chase something, bite something, shred something, anything except sit here and feel. So I tried to do what I always did. I tried to make it simple. She was a Cullen. A leech. A creature that didn't have to fight her own body just to exist. She was engaged to him. She was standing on the winning side of whatever miserable story my life had turned into. And she was, what, granting me permission? Offering me crumbs? Except that wasn't what it felt like. She hadn't treated Thomas like property. She hadn't treated me like a threat. She'd treated me like a person who could make her own choices, and then dared me to actually do it. Decide whether I want him badly enough to face what that means. My head dipped. Because the question behind the question was worse. Did I want him? I hated how my brain tried to dodge that word, how it reached for safer ones. Respect. Gratitude. Curiosity. The fact that he didn't look at me like I was broken glass. The fact that when he gave me Illyrim Black's journals, he didn't demand I be thankful. He didn't act like a hero swooping in to save the damsel. He just saw me. I'd spent so long feeling invisible as a woman, that being seen felt like a bruise. And I'd barely admitted any of that to myself. Barely. And now Edythe Cullen, perfect, controlled, engaged Edythe Cullen, had walked into the woods and said, I have come to care about you, like it was a fact she'd accepted and not a weakness she needed to hide. It didn't make sense. It made too much sense. Thomas talked. Not like most people talked, he wasn't a gossip, but he noticed things. He remembered them. He carried them. He'd probably said my name in that quiet way of his when he thought he was being fair. When he was trying to solve a problem without turning it into a war. He would have told her about the pack. About me. About how the elders may box me in. About the way anger was the only thing I was allowed to be without someone telling me to calm down. And Edythe, she listened when Thomas spoke. That was obvious. But hearing about me wasn't the same as caring. Unless she'd already seen it. Unless she'd already heard it. Then a memory rose up sharp, unwanted. The day in the woods. The confrontation. Jacob's fury. Bella's terrified stubbornness. Edward's calm, rigid control. And me, standing there focusing on Thomas who had just returned from Nepal, with my teeth clenched and my thoughts spilling out because I couldn't stop them. Please let him be mine. Please. Just once, let something be mine. I'd been so exposed in that moment I could still taste the shame. And Edythe had been there. I hadn't known she'd reached for my mind. Not then. But now? Now it clicked into place like a trap snapping shut. She'd heard me. She'd heard that. And she still came to me first. She still chose honesty instead of letting me get blindsided by whispers and rumors and the inevitable moment someone said congratulations in front of me and waited for me to break. My chest tightened. Not pain. Something worse. Something like respect I hadn't asked for. I stopped my pacing and stared at the ground until my vision blurred around the edges. This wasn't supposed to be happening. In my world, if you wanted something you weren't allowed to want, you swallowed it until it turned into poison. You let it rot behind your teeth. You learned to smile like you didn't care. You didn't get offered a way to be honest without being destroyed for it. And yet Edythe had looked straight at me and made one thing brutally clear. If I did this, if I even thought about stepping toward Thomas, I didn't get to do it the way I'd been doing everything else. No resentment. No lies. No pretending I felt nothing and then exploding when someone didn't read my mind. The wolf in me bristled at that. Wanted to reject it just to prove I could. But the girl underneath, the one I kept buried, went very still. Because that girl understood something my wolf didn't want to admit. Resentment was already eating me alive. Resentment toward Sam, Emily, the whole damn pack. Resenting myself for that resentment. I was a wolf mad at her tail and getting dizzy for chasing it. I turned, nosing through the brush until I found the little stash I'd left on the way in, old habit, basic survival. A bundle shoved under a fallen log, cut-offs, a hoodie, sneakers. Nothing fancy. Nothing that screamed Leah Clearwater is falling apart in new and exciting ways today. I hesitated. Shifting right then meant being human, me, bare-skinned, exposed, no teeth to hide behind. But staying wolf meant the pack could feel me if any of them made the change right now. Sam could brush my thoughts by accident. Seth could bounce into my head without meaning to. And I wasn't ready for anyone to hear this mess. I had gotten better at directing what thoughts they could see, but this was too much at the forefront to hide right now. So I shifted. Bones folded. Heat rolled. The world snapped into different focus. And then I was crouched in the damp hollow, human again, breath steaming faintly in the cool air, skin prickling as if the forest itself was staring. I yanked the hoodie on like armor. Pulled on the shorts, the sneakers, the last pieces of normal I could manage. When I stood, my reflection caught in a dark slice of puddle water between roots. Messy hair. Sharp cheekbones. Eyes too bright with anger and something close to panic. And, annoyingly, Edythe's voice flickered again in my head, not her words this time, but the way she'd looked at me. Not disgusted. Not threatened. Not pitying. Just, aware. Like she could see I was hot as hell and miserable about it. Like she could see the way I'd spent years being the pretty girl everyone assumed was fine because pretty girls were always fine, right? I huffed a laugh that sounded like a choke. Great, I muttered to no one. Add that to the list. Then I started walking. Not home yet. Not straight home. Because if I went home, Mom would look at me the way she'd been looking at me since Dad died, like she was bracing for the next loss, and Seth would ask what happened with the Cullen girl and I'd either snap at him or lie, and both options made me want to scream. So, I walked the long way. Let the trees do what they always did, absorb. Stay quiet. Judge nothing. Edythe hadn't promised me a place. She'd made that clear. She hadn't offered comfort. She'd made that clear too. She'd offered truth, and the possibility that I could choose something other than bitterness. I make him see me. That line came back, not in Edythe's voice, but in mine. Like a dare I didn't know I was capable of. Not as a mistake. Not as something that didn't happen. Not as a joke my life played on me. As, me. I stopped again, hand braced against a tree trunk, and forced myself to breathe like a person instead of a cornered animal. Did I want Thomas enough to face what that meant? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But I had something I hadn't had before Edythe showed up with her ring and her calm and her terrifying honesty. I had a choice that wasn't a lie. And that, more than the engagement, more than the ache in my ribs, more than the humiliation of being seen, was what scared me most. Because choices meant responsibility. Choices meant consequences. Chapter 157, Family Banter. Edythe POV. We were at my parents' house because Thomas had insisted on sparring at dawn, again, and Carlisle had offered the easiest solution: stay here, eat here, then go to school from here. It was practical. It was also, in its own quiet way, domestic. Alice was ecstatic to have control of his wardrobe now as well, laying out his clothes, with my approval, when he returned from training. He was aghast at the thought that he now had 2 closets. His one at home and now one at the Cullen house. His frustration was cute and mostly for show, a performance meant purely to tease Alice. Currently, Thomas sat at the kitchen island with a plate that looked like it belonged to 3 people instead of 1. He ate with the kind of intent only humans could manage, every motion alive, warm, relentlessly mortal. I watched him for a moment longer than necessary, letting the steady cadence of his heartbeat smooth the sharper edges left over from yesterday's talk with Leah. He glanced up. "You're doing the staring thing again." "I always do the staring thing," I replied, and let my eyes drift, deliberately, to my hand. The ring caught the overhead light and fractured it into soft, muted colors. His mouth twitched. "I'm still not over the fact that it's real." "Neither am I." I crossed to him and set my hand lightly on his shoulder. "But we need to talk about what real means." His eyebrows lifted. "That sounds like a trap." "It's logistics," I said evenly. He made a low, dramatic sound in his throat. "Alice has infected you." I ignored that, mostly. "In a few weeks," I began, "spring break happens." He stilled mid-motion. "For covering." "Okay. I want our wedding then." The words landed. I watched the moment his mind stopped sprinting and narrowed into a single line of attention. For a heartbeat, he didn't breathe. Then he exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding more air than he realized. "Spring break," he repeated, tasting it. "That's soon." "Yes." His eyes softened. "I thought you wanted small." "Quiet." "I do." I slid my fingers along his jaw, the gesture careful, intimate. "Small doesn't mean delayed." He stared at me like he was trying to memorize my face again. "You're sure?" he asked. I knew it wasn't doubt. Thomas did not treat my choice like a formality. "I'm sure," I said. "I want something intimate. Private. Not a performance. Just us. And the people who matter." His smile turned faint and crooked. "Alice is going to spontaneously combust, again." "She will," I agreed. Later. Not today. He stood from the table, close enough that the warmth of him pressed into the space between us, and kissed my forehead, reverent, steady, as if it was a vow made without witnesses. Okay, he said softly. Spring break. It should have been the end of the conversation. It wasn't. I gently pushed him back to his seat to finish breakfast as I continued. There's another thing, I said, lowering my voice. Thomas's expression shifted immediately, attentive. What is it? The wolves, I said. Not a crisis. Not a fight. Just, the reality that they're young, volatile, and strong, and they'll become stronger. If they're going to learn control and coordination, they need someone who can meet them where they are without turning it into a dominance contest. His gaze sharpened. You want me to train with the pack? Yes. A pause. He voiced the first barrier out loud. Your family can't go. No, I said simply. None of my family can. The treaty is clear. This would be you, alone, working with them on neutral terms. Not us showing up. Not Carlyle mediating. Not Jasper smoothing the room. Thomas studied me for a long moment. Why are you bringing this up now? Because Thomas cared. Because Leah mattered to him. Because I had seen what silence did to her. But I kept my tone steady. Because you can do something the rest of us can't, I said. You can fight at their pace, hard, fast, physical, without forcing them to measure themselves against a vampire. His mouth quirked. You mean I can take a hit without starting a war? Yes, I replied. And you can hit back hard enough that they have to respect you. While you're still human, you have the strength of a vampire. Maybe not a newborn, but as close as we have available. He didn't argue, which told me he understood the point. It wasn't about proving strength. It was about teaching restraint without humiliation. Thomas nodded slowly. All right. I'll talk to Sam. Relief wasn't something my body was built to express, but my mind unclenched anyway. One more thing, I added. He arched an eyebrow. There's always one more thing. Bella, I said. Charlie's grounding won't last forever. Thomas's expression shifted, protective older brother instinct sliding into place. You think he'll let up soon? I don't know, I said honestly. But Alice mentioned she saw a few possible futures where Charlie offers Bella a deal, good behavior, no reckless choices, more freedom. He's trying to be fair. He just doesn't know how. Thomas exhaled. And when Bella gets a little freedom, she's going to use it to see Jacob. I didn't deny it. That's likely. His eyes narrowed slightly. Edward won't like that. No, I agreed. And he will try to be subtle about it at first. He'll tell himself it's about safety. But it's also about trust and jealousy and the fact that Jacob is a reminder that Bella has a life outside of him. It's going to take some time for him to get past that. Thomas leaned back against the counter, looking suddenly tired in the way humans did when they could see trouble coming but couldn't stop it. So, what do? We don't force it, I said quietly. If Edward tightens his grip, Bella will pull away. If he breathes and lets her make choices, she'll come back to him on her own. Thomas was silent for a beat, then nodded once. Okay. I lifted my hand again, watching the ring flash softly. And spring break? His mouth softened into something warm. Spring break, he echoed. Carlyle's footsteps approached behind us, quiet, controlled. He entered the kitchen with that calm presence that always made the room feel steadier. Good morning, he said, eyes briefly catching the ring with gentle approval. How are we doing? Thomas's grin flickered. Apparently getting married on a timetable. Carlyle's smile deepened. That sounds efficient. I didn't correct him. If he wanted to call it efficiency instead of certainty, he could. Carlyle's gaze moved from Thomas to me. And after the wedding? We finish school, I said, letting the word settle with intention. After graduation, we take a planned honeymoon, no deadlines, no timetables, and no reason to come back until we're ready. Carlyle considered me for a moment, that quiet, physician's attention that never felt invasive, just thorough. A planned honeymoon, he repeated gently, as if testing the idea for hidden fractures. That is, reasonable. Thomas snorted under his breath. That's Carlyle speak for I approve, but I'm trying not to scare you off with feelings. Carlyle's smile deepened. I am not sure anything could scare you off at this point, Thomas. That's debatable, Thomas said, and flicked a glance toward the hallway like Alice might materialize with fabric swatches and a tape measure. As if summoned by the thought, Alice drifted into the kitchen doorway, too casual, too bright-eyed, the very picture of restraint in a body that had never been built for it. I'm not doing anything, she announced immediately. Jasper appeared behind her like a shadow with a pulse of amusement. She's doing nothing, very loudly. Alice elbowed him without looking, then bounced closer. Her gaze went to my face first, like she was checking that I still meant it, before it flicked, briefly, to my hand and away again. I heard the words spring break, she said, voice syrup sweet. And I'm sure that was a metaphor. Thomas's eyes narrowed. It was not. Alice's smile sharpened. Oh. Jasper's hand settled on her shoulder before she could combust. Carlyle's gaze moved between them, calmly cataloging the chaos. A small ceremony, Carlyle said, redirecting smoothly, would still require planning. Even minimal planning. I know, I answered. Which is why I'm telling you now. Alice's lips parted. Then closed. Then parted again. The struggle was visible. Thomas pointed at her with his fork. No. Alice blinked innocently. No what? No steamrolling. I wasn't going to. Thomas lifted an eyebrow. Alice sighed dramatically. Fine. I wasn't going to steamroll. I was going to glide. Elegantly. Like a swan. Jasper murmured, like a hurricane in a tutu. Emmett's laugh thundered from somewhere down the hall. I heard that. Rosalie's voice followed, dry, bored, and faintly irritated. If you two break anything before I finish pulling part numbers, I'm throwing you all outside. Carlyle's expression remained serene, but his eyes warmed. We can discuss details later. For now, I'm glad you've chosen a timeline you're comfortable with. Thomas shifted in his chair slightly, one of those tiny human movements that meant he was absorbing the weight of it. Then he nodded once, decisive. Spring break, he said again, and this time it sounded less like surprise and more like a promise. Alice finally exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Okay, she said, voice suddenly soft. Small. Intimate. Edythe's choice. I met her gaze. Yes. Her smile returned gentler now, proud in a way that didn't feel possessive. Then I'll help the way you want. Not the way I want. That, Jasper said quietly, might be the most heroic thing you've ever done. Alice glared at him. I can hear you. I know, he replied, unbothered. Thomas pushed the last bite of steak and eggs around his plate and glanced at Carlyle again, circling back. So, after the wedding, after graduation. Honeymoon. No deadlines. Carlyle nodded. And in the meantime, there are realities to manage. Thomas's gaze sharpened. The pack. Carlyle's attention flicked to me, then back to Thomas. Yes. If you're going to approach them about training, you should be prepared for resistance. Not only from Sam, but from the others. Pride is a difficult thing to set aside. I'm not trying to replace anyone, Thomas said. Just. His jaw tightened. I can help. I know, Carlyle said simply. But help can look like provocation if it arrives the wrong way. Thomas's mouth quirked. So I should make the offer peacefully. Preferably one that does not involve punching, Carlyle said, mild as ever. Emmett wandered into the kitchen then, shirtless, hair still damp like he'd just come from the shower. He clapped Thomas on the shoulder hard enough to rattle bone, well, human bone, anyway. If the wolves give you trouble, tell them you've been personally certified by Edward Cullen as an acceptable opponent, he declared. Thomas deadpanned. That's definitely going to calm them down. Emmett grinned. You're welcome. Edward entered last, quiet, composed, and faintly distracted in the way he got when Bella was on his mind. Emmett's grin widened instantly. There he is. Our favorite brooder. Edward's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Good morning, Emmett. Careful, Emmett warned the room, stage whispering. He's in a mood. Edward sighed like he'd done this exact routine 1,000 times. I'm going to pick Bella up. Emmett clasped his hands to his chest, dramatically moved. Tell her I'm praying for her continued survival around you. Edward finally looked at him, amused despite himself. I'll tell her you're being unbearable again. Emmett beamed. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Edward shook his head, still faintly smiling as he turned away. Try not to break anything while I'm gone. That includes stripping bolts. Emmett's eyes lit up. No promises. Edward's answer came over his shoulder, dry but not unkind. Of course not. A moment later, the back door opened and closed, his departure controlled, familiar, almost casual. Alice suddenly clapped her hands, sharp, bright, breaking the tension like snapping a thread. Okay. School. Humans. Pretending we're normal. Everyone grab your things. Thomas quickly finished the last of his steak, rinsed his plate and set it in the sink. I handed him his jacket and when he took it his eyes caught on the ring on my finger. His expression did something small and helpless, like awe trying to disguise itself as irritation. I still can't believe you said yes, he murmured. I stepped closer and leaned into him, brief and careful, so the others wouldn't have to watch anything too intimate. You asked the right way, I whispered. His hand found mine automatically, steady, grounding, then he let go to grab his bag. Alice was already herding us toward the garage like a general with excellent fashion sense. All three of us moved to Thomas's truck. Be normal. Alice chirped, too cheerful. Thomas muttered, define normal. Normal was irrelevant. We were building something real. Chapter 158, The Deal. Thomas POV. By lunch, Forks High had mostly adjusted to the ring on Edythe's hand. Not in the sense that anyone forgot, this was still Forks, and Forks could turn a new haircut into folklore, but the initial wave had burned itself out. The staring had shifted into something more routine, quick glances, whispered updates, Jessica Stanley logging data like she was compiling evidence for a court case. What mattered more was where we sat. When we'd come back to Forks, the Cullens, the three actually enrolled, Edythe, Alice, and Edward, had started sitting with Bella's table on purpose. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't accidental. It was a choice, the same kind of choice that looked small from the outside and carried real weight underneath. Keep Bella connected. Keep her anchored. Keep her human. So naturally when I returned, I joined them as well, much to Ben's excitement. Bella slid into her seat beside Edward with that careful, controlled posture she'd been wearing ever since Charlie grounded her, like she was trying to prove she could be normal by force of will alone. Angela and Ben were already there. Angela smiled first, soft and sincere, like she was relieved Bella existed in the same space again. Ben gave an awkward nod, polite, loyal, still a little intimidated by the Cullen radius. Jessica sat a little too upright, eyes flicking to Edythe's left hand out of habit. Then she pretended she hadn't. Mike Newton hovered for half a second longer than necessary before sitting, as if he needed permission from Edward's presence. Alice beamed at everyone like this was her favorite show. Edythe sat close enough to me that my knee brushed hers under the table, nothing dramatic, just a quiet point of contact. A reminder. A promise. Edward looked exactly like Edward always looked in public, calm, attentive, polite enough to be disarming. If you didn't know him, you'd miss the tension under it. I shifted my food tray and leaned in just slightly toward Bella. You look like you're holding a hostage negotiation deal that could fall through any moment. What's up, Dot? Bella's mouth twitched. I basically am. Angela's brows pulled together. Bella. Bella exhaled, then, like she'd decided ripping off the bandage was better than letting it fester, she said, Charlie let me off grounding. The table went still in that particular high school way, everyone trying to act casual while listening like their grades depended on it. Wow! I thought he was intent on keeping you on lockdown until you were 30. I asked, laughing. Edward's expression didn't change, but his focus sharpened. He did. Sort of, Bella corrected quickly. It's a deal. A probation deal. I mess up, it's over. Angela's face brightened. That's, actually really good. Ben nodded. Yeah. That's fair. Jessica leaned forward half an inch. What kind of deal? Bella shot her a look that was both relieved someone asked, and worried at the same time. The kind that involves me being home at 10. Mike blinked. 10? That's not. He stopped, probably remembering Charlie Swan's mustache could enforce curfews through sheer willpower. Bella continued, ticking it off like she'd memorized the terms. No disappearing. No reckless choices. And. She hesitated, eyes flicking briefly to Edward before she forced the words out, I have to spend time with people who aren't Edward. Angela's smile turned even softer. Okay, good. Edward's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close enough to count. That seems reasonable. Bella stared at him like she'd just witnessed a solar eclipse indoors. Are you, agreeing with my dad? I'm trying to see things from his point of view, Edward said lightly, and there was a hint of real effort in it. Like he'd decided today wasn't the day to turn this into a battlefield. Alice clapped her hands once, bright and contained. Perfect. That means plans. Bella's eyes narrowed. No. Yes, Alice countered, cheerful as sin. But normal plans, like Angela plans. She was just talking about needing help hand addressing envelopes for graduation invites. Maybe we could turn it into a girls' slumber party or something. Throw in some sappy romance movies and lots of talk about what we are doing after high school. Angela's cheeks went pink. I mean, we could do something. If you want. Bella's posture softened in a way that made my chest tighten, because it looked like relief. Not about Edward. About Angela. About being allowed to exist in her human friendships again without it feeling like betrayal. Yet, Bella said, quieter. I want. Alice bounced in her seat and let out a little happy squeal. What about you, Jessica? Edythe, are you girls in? I gave Edward a quick look. He met it, and for a second a silent message passed cleanly between us. Inevitably this will lead to Bella seeking out Jacob. Then, unsurprisingly, I noticed Jessica's gaze drift to Edythe's hand, again. Not dramatic. Just automatic. Like her eyes couldn't accept that the ring wasn't the center of the universe anymore. I caught Edythe watching me watch Jessica and gave her my flattest expression. She leaned in, voice quiet. Don't. I wasn't going to start a fight, I murmured back. I was going to start a rumor. Her lips curved. That's worse. Alice, who absolutely heard that, brightened. What rumor? Nothing, Edythe and I said at the same time. Alice's grin widened like she'd just been handed a gift. Bella, meanwhile, had noticed my empty left hand again. She'd noticed it earlier too, she just hadn't said anything in front of everyone. But Bella couldn't keep a question inside her forever. So, she said, "Careful, why aren't you wearing one?" Jessica's head snapped around like she'd been waiting for that exact line. Mike blinked, suddenly interested too, like he'd discovered an angle that made this less intimidating. Angela looked politely confused, like rings weren't supposed to be a group discussion. I exhaled once through my nose. Because of how much I lift weights. My hands tend to swell a bunch when I am pushing myself. It's why you rarely see professional weightlifters wear rings at all. Bella's eyes widened. Right. I forgot. It's all good sis, I said, keeping my voice casual. I have been thinking of different options. I could wear a necklace with a ring on it and maybe when I stop lifting so much start wearing it. Or I could get a rubber ring that has enough elasticity to not hurt me. The last option I am looking at is a band tattoo around my finger. We just have to decide what fits us best. I reached for Edythe's hand at that point. It was a good excuse that would pass most people's questions. After all, it's not like I can say it's because I shift into a giant tiger sometimes and may not have time to take the ring off first if I'm in a hurry. Angela made a small, startled noise. Oh. Ben muttered, "That's not something I had even considered." Alice's eyes lit up like she was physically restraining herself from launching into a fashion monologue. "I have ideas no matter what way you go." Edythe's gaze cut to Alice, gentle, but warning. Alice snapped her lips together. Then she mouthed, "Later," like a mime in a tiny invisible box. Bella nodded slowly, absorbing it. Then her expression shifted, less curiosity, more quiet thoughtfulness. Like the ring wasn't news, but the choices around it still meant something. Edward's hand moved, subtle, controlled, to rest against Bella's wrist for half a second. Not possessive. Not claiming. Just present. Bella didn't pull away. That, more than anything, told me today was a fragile kind of progress. The bell schedule kept moving. Forks High kept spinning. Jessica kept collecting information like she might publish it. But at this table, Angela was already talking about getting with her parent to plan the girls' night, Bella was easing back into her own life, Edward was trying to behave like a person instead of a fortress with a sign at the door that read "No wolves." Things were aligning. Not perfect. Not simple. Just, moving. Edythe's knee brushed mine again under the table, a quiet question without words. I leaned slightly toward her, just enough for her to hear. "Spring break," I murmured. Her eyes softened, a flash of something warm and certain. Then Alice, because she couldn't help herself, smiled sweetly at me and said, "You know, people will pay more attention if you say that like it's a secret code." I didn't look away from my now empty tray. Good. Bella blinked. Good. I finally glanced up, letting my tone stay easy. Let them wonder. Edythe's mouth twitched. Edward sighed like he'd been born tired of all of us. Angela looked between us, baffled but smiling anyway. And for one normal, strange, dangerous moment, Forks High felt almost like it could hold us without cracking.